محمد على بالنسبه للجماعه المنطقيه بالوقت الله يخليكم، لان في جماعه للان ما وصلوا المواضيع طويله، فالتاخير هذا داخل الوقت ايش؟ على موضوع الخروج، فنبغى نقيم في الوقت على اساس الحضور، على اساس ما نتعطل بالخروج ما يأثر عليها. بالنسبه للموضوع الثاني موضوع اللي هو البريك تايم. بريك تايم طبعا يعني المفروض نبدا الساعه 8:30 وعلى الساعه 9:30 او 9 10 الا ربع نبدا على الافطار نص ساعه، ثم ذلك مباشر بعد الوقت بعد الفطور تستكمل المحاضره برزنتيشن الدوره من الساعه 10:15 لين الساعه 11:30، ثم بريك 10 دقائق 5 دقائق، بعد ذلك بريك ثاني للصلاه، وبعد ذلك ننهي على الساعه 2:30. بالنسبه للجماعه اللي ما دفعوا رسوم للدوره هذه، يجيك بعد صندوق هناك وكيل موجود هناك على موضوع قضيه الرسوم والاجراءات. في بعض الناس لهم اجراءات ثانيه، اعطيك مراسله من دولهم، هذا شيء ثاني، بس اللي جاي معاه يخلص الموضوع معاه الصندوق. بالنسبه بيكون هناك عشاء يوم الاربعاء بالليل، يعني في احد المطاعم للجميع، على اساس يكون تعارف موجود. الشيء الثالث كان ودي انه يكون الجميع متواجدين الان، على اساس كل واحد كثير منهم ما يعرف الثاني، وكل شخص ما يعرف من اي جهه جاي، فبغينا بس كانوا متواجدين جماعه كاملين اليوم، على اساس الواحد يعرف نفسه ومن اي دوله، على اساس يكون جماعه يعرف مع من زميله او صاحبه، لانه في المستقبل بينفع التعارف. بس خلي يستقبلون الشباب بعد شباب متاخرين، ان شاء الله بعد البريك بنسوي تعارف الموضوع هذا. الان حسب الوقت، فمستر مارك we start the presentation. Toby.
Yes. Hi. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Okay. Yesterday we showed you how different locks work, more or less the different components for locks. Yesterday also we bumped open some locks.
البارحة وريناكم بعض أنواع القوانين والأقفال ومكوناتها وكيف فتحها، وأيضا وريناك موضوع اللي هو بامب لوكس، اللي هو فتح بطريقة الارتطام أو الصدم.
And let me also comment, we've got, if everybody doesn't understand exactly what we're doing for bumping, which is a pretty serious issue.
أبغى أفهم ملاحظة، إذا في حد ما حد يعرف هذا الموضوع البامبينج أو فتح الارتطام، وهو موضوع مهم.
We've got a separate PowerPoint that we did for AFTI on bumping.
عملنا عرض برزنتيشن في الباوربوينت، عدد مواضيع في الباوربوينت في آفتي لموضوع فتح الارتطام.
We did this in America a couple of years ago to brief everybody, and we may go through that again because we want to make sure that you understand the risks and exactly how it works with low security and high security locks.
لازم نفهمكم ان هذا عملناه من خلال سنتين بالنسبه للاجراءات، لانه موضوع خطير، وللكفول اللي هو مستوياتها ضعيفه تامينات او عالي التامين.
Because we showed you yesterday how to open locks but not why they're open.
نحن وريناكم البارحة كيف تنفتح الكفول but
not why they're open. We showed how to do it,
yes,
but not why it's happening.
وريناكم البارحة كيف يعني كيف فتحت بس ما نعرف ليش يعني شو السبب تنفتح ولا طريقة فتحها بس ما عرفناكم شو الإجراء اللي خلاه يفتح الطريقة هاي.
And you need to understand why it's happening to analyze them. And while Toby's talking, I'll bring up some different information to show where, when we bring up a microscope after the break, we'll show where you can look for marks.
Okay. لازم تعرف الأسس العلمية اللي فتحت فيه طريقة القفل هذا لأن أنت تحليلك العلمي هذا بتعرف شو الآثار اللي تدور عليها بالنسبة لهذا القفل والطريقة اللي فتحت فيها وبنحضر بعد البريك بنحط الميكروسكوب ونوريكم الآثار الموجودة على هاي وين تحصل الآثار.
Okay, Toby, go ahead.
Okay, so you're here guys because you wanna find marks, tool marks, in any specific log and figure out if the log was bypassed. Okay?
أنتم تعرفون كيف تعرفون القفل الآثار الخاصة بآثار الآلات في القفل نفسه وشو الأدوات اللي استخدمت في التجاوز الفني مالها على أساس فتحت والآثار اللي بتحصلوا عليها.
Okay. So yesterday we bumped open some locks and some of you opened these locks by bumping the cylinder.
بعضكم فتح هذا النظام السلندر عن طريق الارتطام بفتح الباب وعرفتوا كيف طريقة الفتح.
So the question is for you guys. Where do you think you're gonna find marks on that cylinder?
السؤال وين بتحصلوا هالآثار بنظام السلندرات؟
Pins.
ها؟
Pins.
البنز.
In the pins, correct. That's one point you're gonna get marks. What else do you think?
And the toe, because when you put the tension tool, there's maybe some marks happen inside it.
Yeah, that's correct.
That is correct.
The entrances also.
That is correct. What else?
خلص أتكلم على هذا. الجماعة قالوا بالنسبة للبساتم عراس البساتم وفي حد قال في المجرى المفتاح.
Any other ideas? Yes.
Maybe they tried several times. There were a few marks on the pins themselves on the shear line when they hit the shear line. They were trying.
You're correct too. Anybody else?
shear line?
إذا حاول كمان مرة يضرب البنس بتضرب الشير لاين ممكن
Yeah, that's why we went yesterday on how the law works. What she's saying is basically. Do you have can you bring a ping pong or log? We have our shear line. This is the plug.
الشير لاين اللي هو قصده اللي هو الحد الفاصل ما بين المحور مال السلندر والجسم القفل. اوكي.
We have some pins also in the bottom, right? This is the base of the tape, and we have some top pins, what we call top pins.
في نوعين في طبعا البستم السفلي والبستم العلوي موجودين في القفل.
There are some top pins that we showed you yesterday. It's like a mushroom.
في نوع من البن يسمى اللي هو الفطر بستم الفطر او المشروم.
Okay. The difference using a normal key and a bump key. When you put your normal key, you just put the key all the way in and then you turn this on. With bump key, you put the key, you turn the plug, and then you hit it. Okay? So there's a chance that these portions here start making impressioning on the shell on top. The holes start getting bigger. They have done on the microscope, and it's also you can find excessive wear in the lock.
بالنسبة القفل المفتاح العادي انك تدخل المفتاح وتلف السلندر عادي. نظام البمب تقنية البمب او تقنية الارتطام شو اللي يصير؟ يصير ان تحط المفتاح وتسوي تشد عليه ثم تنتظر لما تشد عليه الفتحة هذه تتوسع، فتحة اللي فيها يسمونها البستن هي تتوسع بقوة الشد وضربها.
Okay. So we can analyze also the top pins and see how those wear on those top pins or any marks on those top pins.
The other thing is we're going to potentially see distortion in the chambers, in the roundness of the chambers.
بعد نشوف الامور غير طبيعيه اللي موجوده في المجرى مفتاح.
Okay. Now, in the same process of bumping, we have a spring on top of that pin stack that we were talking yesterday, right? Now, we have to notice that bumping is a very rapid and very violent effect on the lock. When we hit the bottom pin, this top pin tries to separate, and it compresses also the spring on top more than a regular key. A regular key is
It's normal flexing.
okay, and this one is you compressing the pin, the spring, so you, depending on the manufacturer and depending how many times they have to bump it, you can see pins, the springs compress also.
Yeah, and this actually may affect the operation of the lock as well. We see this in high security locks especially. And we will see the springs compressed so that the lock won't operate properly.
I mean, for the bumping, the spring will be.
Yeah, well, it compresses, so it gets smaller, so that there's not enough tension on the tumblers, one or more of the tumblers. And then it makes it very difficult to open the lock, especially if there's dirt or grime or residue.
بالنسبة this is bumping.
Yeah, pumping, that's what we're talking about.
في تقنية الارتطام ان الزنبرك نفسه بحد ذاته يفتقد جهد ماله او مرونته، بيكون مش طبيعي لانه يكون ارتطام ماله فقوة الجهد اللي عليه بيخلي خلل في يسمونه في شكل طبيعي.
Okay, to show you how violent, first of all, I'm going to pass a bump key, one of the bump keys, and I want you to look at the cuts of the keys. You can just pass it. Okay, take a look at the key, and if you look at the key, the process when we hit it, you're going to see some marks also on the key when they try to enter and push those pins in.
You mean in the neck of the key? In the
Huh?
end? You mean in the neck of the key? In the last
Okay,
key?
no, the cuts. Okay? This is a cut for the key. Okay, so the pin usually sits in the base. Okay? But when you move that key over here, it's gonna create force on that pin to bump it. But if you look at the key here, you're gonna look for very big marks on that key.
يعني هي انت البومبينج هي هذا البند بالطريقه هذه، فلما تضربه انت هني بيسوي علامه قويه على هذا الجو. هذه سقط. اكبر.
So if you see the key, imagine the pins also gets that impression. It's something that is not normal in the normal introducing of the key.
this case, can we see this mark in all the pin? In all the pin, because the key
It depends how, you
in the
know.
same place.
Okay, bomb keys are, it's relatively new, it's not new, but the way that you can create bomb keys, it depends what tool you use to create. You can use a file to file down a normal key, okay? When you use a file, you're not gonna file it at the same place.
Exactly parallel.
Okay, so it's like all our cuts are not on the same plane. When you start bumping that key can self-impression and allow you to open the lock. But not all the pins may be bumped at the same time. So you may have ones that really have some deep mark, and the other ones like, hey, it's like the pin wasn't there. Depending on the combination also.
The best way for us to create a bump key is with a key machine, with a code cutting key machine. So, and we'll go through this in the, assuming we get to the bump key PowerPoint, but you can cut bump keys by hand, but they're not as precise as when we cut them by code in an automated machine or a punch machine.
يسمون المفاتيح اللي تسمى حق تصميم حق البنكي يقول ممكن تسويه بايدك تقطع اقل حفاظه لكن ما بتكون بكفاءه لما تكون على الكود المتعارف عليه بالرقم بالليفل اللي هو متدني تنزله على نفس المستوى.
So the idea is, as we'll show you in the PowerPoint, to transfer equivalent amount of energy to the base of each pin at the same time.
العرض في الباوربوينت حوريكم ما مقدار الطاقة اللي يحتاج البستن اللي المفتاح الأساس يستخدم فيه على أساس يعطيك يسمح لك إنه يفتح المفتاح.
This is totally different than picking or any other kind of attack.
هذا مختلف تماما عن تقنية أي طفاشة أو فتح فني آخر.
It's much more likely to produce indication that the lock was bumped if there's any indication at all. It depends how you bump the lock.
Again?
So, well, if you don't know what you're doing, or the lock has got gum in it, you know, debris, dirt,
Okay.
then it's going to be more, or if it hasn't been lubricated in a while.
اوكي. القفل في بعض الأحيان إذا ما تعرف تتعامل مع القفل سواء كان داخل أشواك كثيرة من القاذورات شيء داست
Anything, any dirt, grit, dust, salt from near the sea.
سواء الأشياء يكون في ترسبات قريبة من البحر من هالأمور فالتعامل بيكون شوي يعني تحاول تعامل بطريقة مختلفة.
Yeah, any contaminants, anything that exceeds the ability for the pins to freely move up and down will require more energy and more strikes.
يحتاج على هذا الشوائب في الشوائب القفل يحتاج تستخدم طبعا جهد أقوى.
And it depends on the design of the bump key, as we said. If it's hand cut with a file,
يعتمد على تصميم المفتاح حق البامب هل هو عن طريق عمل الفاتحة بالمسحل أو
hand cut.
hand cut and
Go by hand.
If it's hand cut, it may be a lot more difficult to bump the lock. Because Toby, draw a diagram
Yeah, let me get
where the, and we'll show you a diagram when we bring up PowerPoint, where the actual energy is hitting the pins, because it's not the base of the pins that we care about. When you introduce energy into the lock, it's not the base of the pins that we care about so much. it's the ramps or the side angles of the pins. Because what you're doing is, go ahead, you're transmitting motion to move those pins up and down. But you can't get underneath the pins to do that, obviously.
مصدر الطاقة مصدر القوة حيكون على طريق الجنب ليس من الأسفل. لأن الطاقة اللي تصدرها من حركة المفتاح على البن الجانبية على أساس يعطيك الحركة تقدر طالع ونزول.
If we had a way to insert a bump key and then apply energy to the bottom of the key, that would be the best way to bump a lock. But obviously we can't do that.
إذا حصلنا طريقة أن نخلي المفتاح يسعد الطريقة هذه أو طريقة ولكن ما نمتثلها طريقة إنه إيش بيمشي خلي إيش ضرب جانبي اللي هو الطريقة الجانبية عشان يسعد عليه.
So what we're doing is we're slamming that key forward. And when it's the interaction, which you really need to understand, the interaction between the angle of the pin, of the key, and the base of the pin. And that's driving those up. Now, if the angles aren't all the same on the key, then they're going to contact those pins at different times.
And you do
Follow?
that again. No, that's only again.
Okay. So we have a key with okay. So let's just pretend this is a key.
Okay.
Okay. And there's pins there. When you move that key forward, this is going to intersect here. It's not intersecting here. This pin is intersecting as this goes forward.
This is the photo that's
Yeah, let's just pretend this is forward.
forward, okay?
Okay. So these angles should all be parallel in perfect order.
Okay.
Now the problem is when you cut a key, if you use a round file, it will look like that.
Yes.
Versus, you know what a code cut means.
Yes.
They're very precise.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the trick. And the trick is to get each pin to make contact at exactly the same time
Okay.
with the size of the key as it's moving forward.
طبعا طريقة القص المفاتيح اللي يمشي بشكل طريقة الكود أو الشفرة على بيكون بشكل الطريقة بيكون متوازي.
Where's the code cut?
ف ف فلما البست بيكون بشكل دائري فالضرب اللي حيكون مختلفات حيكون آثاره تقريبا متساوية مع المسافة.
Okay, so Toby passed around keys. Did you all look at the keys?
شفتوا المفاتيح؟ يظهر عليكم انتم المفاتيح، شفتوا المفاتيح؟
Okay, so these are code cut keys. These are made by the
هذه
factory.
المفاتيح مقطوعة بنظام الشفرة.
Okay,
المصنعية مو بالهاندلينج. Okay.
so the geometry on these keys is as perfect as it's going to get as far as the design of the root, the base of each pin and
طبعا
the angles.
هذا مسوي بشكل جيد المقاييس مالها على حسب الزوايا ها
تماثل فيها
تماثل كامل لان مصنعي القطع المصنعي هذا بنفس المستويات المفروض عليه الموجود على المسافه المفروض تكون داخل المفتاح.
So that's what we want. So in bumping, as we'll show in the PowerPoint, and the reason we're concentrating on bumping, if it's not in your country, it's going to be. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I briefed my manufacturing clients that had no knowledge of lock bumping, that this was coming and it was going to be a major issue, and that they better pay attention and they better start designing anti-bumping techniques, anti-bumping pins to combat this. So now in America and in Europe, some manufacturers have deployed anti-bumping pins. to stop this. Because especially in cheap locks, I mean, we've seen quite a few burglaries now in America.
اوكي
It's easy.
الان هاي عمليه الارتقام صارت الان ممكن تتعلم بسرعه بشكل سريع وصارت الان رائجه في امريكا. فالان بدات الان محلات او مصانع الاقفال تصنع اقفال تحاول تحد من موضوع نظام الارتقام. bumping. Okay. So the factory now doing that.
The factories are starting to implement anti-bumping pins on the better locks.
يحطون الان تصاميم للبساتم بطريقه يعني تعيق موضوع البامبينج لوك او الارتطام طريقه الارتطام.
Do you have over here Master Lock?
ماستر لوك.
Master Lock, yeah. Master Lock company from America, they padlocks, bike locks, padlocks.
Yes, I think we have.
Yeah. Master Lock, one of my friends is the chief engineer for Master Lock. He patented an anti-bumping pin that they're now incorporating in their locks. Go ahead.
I know, I only heard of one. So what is it?
Okay, so Master Lock, which is a very large company worldwide,
شركة اسمها ماستر لوك مشهورة موسوعة عالميا. Okay.
they have made their locks exceedingly difficult to bump open unless you know the trick.
صنعوا يسمونه سلندرات ضد يسمونه البامبينج او نظام الارتقام، ولكن البارحه كان هو طبعا صرح اذا انت تعرف سر القفل تقدر تفتحه، بس قال هني قال if you know it you can open it.
Yeah, there's a trick.
There's حيلة كلها للقفل له حيلة.
There's always a trick. We're going to show you some of the tricks later. That's the problem. So, but these locks to the average consumer are very, very difficult to open and they're not expensive. Yeah, go ahead. So the bottom line, the important thing is that bumping will come to your jurisdiction. If you look on YouTube, there's hundreds of videos about lock bumping.
إذا بتشوفون في اليوتيوب تحصلون هناك مئات فتح طريق الخطام.
It was so important in the United States and in Europe that we did probably 100 television interviews, including national television, to talk about the problem.
عملنا مئات المقابلات في امريكا وفي اوروبا على هذه المشكله اللي هو فتح الابواب.
Yeah, because every reporter that we talked to was able to open locks in a matter of a few seconds.
كل صحفي او قابلناه تبين بعد المقابله يفتح الابواب بثواني.
So it's very understandable by the public.
يعني مفهوم جدا للعامة.
So if you take your cheap locks that are flooding into your country,
إذا أنتم مثلا أخذتوا كميات كبيرة من القفول الضعيفة الشيبة أو رخيصة في البلاد,
then you really need to understand that these are subject to bumping. We should get some of your cheap locks over here. We should go to a locksmith while we're here and get some cheap locks. Just some cylinders. So we can show them.
أكبر.
Yeah,
I want cheap locks.
yeah. Here.
Cheap locks, you know.
Yeah, we want, listen, can you get us some cheap cylinders that just good examples? And let's get one of your locksmiths, or if you have a code machine, let's cut some keys by Covert. Just all deep step. Yeah, or after we leave 2:30, we go over to the lock shop. Why don't we do that? Just go to a lock shop.
them, okay?
Yeah, all right, so can you organize that? And we'll tell them. Listen, I've got a better idea. We've got Ingersoll Rand, Ingersoll rated Schling. They have an office in Dubai. They've already contacted me. They know who to go to. All right, so we'll organize with you guys. Because these guys really need to understand. Okay.
قضية الآن قضية الشرح كيفية انتم هاي المواضيع اللي نطرحها هو الآن يبقى يعرف أول شيء ميكانيكية الأطفال نظريتها قبل ما يدخل قضية إيش التحقيق على أساس تفهمون الميكانيكية القبل بالكامل على أساس ما تعرف الموضوع ما تعرف كيف تنفتح الأبواب ما تعرف هالأساليب اللي ممكن مداخلات أو في التحقيق يفيدك إيش الفحص الفني لأن معرفة هالأمور أنت ما تقدر تفتي في أمور إذا أنت مش متمرس فيها بإيدك. يعني إذا أنت مش متمرس فيه في إيدك ما تعرف هذا. معظم عمل الفني والتحقيق الفني لازم تسوي تجربة وتشوف نفسك على أساس تقدر تقرر وتحكم بهذه الأمور والآثار اللي تحصلها في المستقبل في التحقيق.
Your crime lab director asked, when did this bumping start? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Which is in our PowerPoint. In 1925, an English patent was issued for a bump key.
في هذا يسأل الأستاذ محمد حسني متى بدأت موضوع طرق هذا؟
لا بس traces.
دقيق.
The traces. Can we determine the time of happening?
Oh, no.
Today, because if a case happened today, they ask us, it is from the accident or before or after or since when?
Well, that's a really complicated problem. Let's say the lock's been sitting for 2 months and there's corrosion or there's material buildup.
هناك صدى ولا تآكل ولا في
corrosion, material buildup.
أو ترسبات.
Okay, then you're going to see that and maybe the marks won't be so clear. But the problem is, let's say last week, somebody bumped open the lock, and then somebody uses the key 10 times.
Yeah.
Now you're screwed.
Because
You wipe out.
everybody asks us the same.
Yeah, but
سؤال محمد حسني يقول احنا فينا قضايا يسألون لنا ممكن تحديد الوقت اللي فتح فيه الباب يعني هل بتاريخ واقعة الحادث أو لا فيقول طبعا صعب يقول لأن إذا كان البساتم عليها تآكل أو ترسبات وفتح من أسبوع الباب ثم أنا بعد 3 أسبوع وأنا أدخل مفتاح افتح الباب وجرب المفتاح خلاص ما في فايدة يصير أبحث على أساس يقول تاريخ الواقع ما أقدر أقول أي تاريخ.
yeah, it's a real problem because all of the forensic analysis, whether it's bumping, picking, raking, vibrating pick, there's lots of variables.
يقول عدة طرق فتح الباب من الطفاشة ومن هذا جهاز الفابريتنج الاهتزاز أو بأي أساليب أخرى حتى من الارتطام عدة مجالات.
So you can testify, yes, this lock was bumped open likely.
أنت ممكن هذا فتح بطريقة من أحد الطرق هذه.
But unless you can match the suspect and the time frame, you can't testify that this guy did it unless you can do material transfer from his bump key that you get him, okay, and the lock.
أنت ما تربط المتهم بالقفل الا اذا كان عندك امور ثانيه الاداه اللي مستخدمه تثبت عليه هو بايده بصمات وكذا مع الاثار الموجوده نفس الاثار الموجوده في القفل.
So if you stop somebody at the scene of a break-in or trying to break in,
اذا انت ضبطت متلبس وقت هو يفتح الباب او بعد ما دخل
and let's say he's got a bump key,
وعنده نظام هذا طرف المفتاح هذا طبعا.
then you can analyze the lock and say this lock was attempt to be bumped open and the suspect has a key that would bump it open.
انت ممكن تقول لك ساعه ان هذا بعد فحص القفل شو القفل تفحصه تعرف تشوف الاثار تقول فتح بطريقه الاختطاف وعند الادوات الموجوده خلينا
Now, the problem is you cannot testify that he opened the lock.
لكن المشكله انك ما تقدر تشهد انه هو فتح القفل.
So these are compound problems. Now in America, I don't know what your laws are. Well, in our burglary statutes, we have a breaking and entering statute.
Okay.
If you insert a screwdriver or a key or anything attempting to open that lock,
Okay.
it's attempted breaking and entering.
اذا انت في اي محاوله دخلت مفتاح مفك سلك اي شيء داخل المفتاح يعتبر قضيه محاوله
شروع
Attempt, yeah,
شروع.
trying.
Yes.
But unless you can show that lock was open, it may not be burglary. If you don't get them inside, it may be attempted burglary or attempted breaking and entering. In America, burglary is defined breaking and entering with the intent to commit a felony inside.
تعريف السطو انك لازم تكون دخل داخل على اساس هذا طبعا قانونيه حاجه قانونيه هني قانونيه
ايوه تعال روبري
لا اساسا
Robbery is different. Robbery is like
شو يقول
force.
الصدق يكون داخل محل داخل مكان
Robbery is taking
لا
something from somebody.
اذا كان داخل يعني فتح الباب ودخل داخل يعني متى يكون سرقه؟ متى يكون شرع السرقه؟ متى تكون شرع السرقه؟
السرقة هي حيال مال معقول مملوك للغير.
من يبدا
الشروع
شروع السرقه حد يعرف اياهم؟
الشروع يوم يبدا في الشروع
ايه
والبت في تنفيذ فعل
ايه
اوقف او خاب اثره
ايوه
ليد خارج عن نطاق الفعل او المتهم
زين
بتوقف العمل
زين
جاي بالعده وجاي يروح
زين.
عشان يفتح جه البوليس وقبض عليه خاب اثره
واذا كان داخل المكان
ها
واذا كان داخل
داخل
المكان
المكان ده يبقى يعني تلبس حاله تلبس
ده ضبط تلبس وده موضوع سرقه.
Okay. Also, yes, yes, sir.
وممكن
ليش ما يخترعون بالريموت كنترول يعني اوتوماتيك يفكونه
بعد ترى ينسرق بعد اسهل هذا.
شوفوا المفكور
لا يعني قبل
بدون مفتاح.
مفتاح
اسهل هذا.
يفكونه الصدعه يركبونه في الباب
That's the most
دايركت.
animated discussion we've had.
لا he was asking why did he make this is like button or remote control.
Oh, they do, they have.
Well,
Yes, they do, they have. هذا موجود.
So then again, you're the physics girl, right? I already was told you're getting a physics degree? Oh, you got one, okay. So ask your question.
Isn't there radio frequency? Because you mentioned this yesterday.
That's a different issue. I can talk about that, I'll address that after the break. Will you remind me?
Yeah.
Radio frequency, yeah. Because that has nothing to do with pumps. But it has to do with electronic
Yeah,
locks.
because you mentioned from
لا
far.
الالكتروني ما يشتغل الا بالمفتاح.
Yesterday I mentioned RF as an attack method. Radio frequency energy. Yeah, okay. But, so, let's continue this after the break because I teach testimony and how to examine witnesses.
هو ايضا من مجال اختصاصه انه يدرب خبراء فاحصين في الشهاده في المحاكم.
You all know that I'm a lawyer and was a prosecutor for a long time.
كان هو ماسك
محامي.
يسمونه تحقيق في النيابة لمدة طويلة.
So you really need to understand the hazards that the defense lawyers can cause you, the problems, if you don't exactly understand the limits of what you can do.
لازم تعرفون المشاكل اللي بتواجهونها مع المحامي والامور اللي نتكلم فيها على اساس تكون عندكم علميه وخلفيه على هالمواضيع اللي تطرحونها.
في هناك ليسان حق المحكمة حق بالنسبة حق الموضوع. يعني مثلا إذا طلبوا مني شهادة يطلبون مني مثلا خبرته في ذا المجال مع شهادة.
قصدك شهادة الخبرة.
محامي.
يعني.
Cause witness.
Okay. He was asking all the examiner he had be certified.
Yeah.
To be the witness.
Yes, and that really subjects you, we were talking about that last night at dinner.
Okay.
That really subjects you to a real problem. Because if you make a mistake and you testify to something that the defense lawyer is able to really attack, that shows you didn't understand what you were talking about, it'll follow you through your whole career.
إذا أنت شهدت وتكلمت أشياء أنت ما تعرف عنها بس بتأثر على مستقبلك وعلى سمعتك على مدى طويلة.
يمكن يقضي في السجن بعد.
إيه نعم. يعني على قولتهم شهر مش حاجة.
Another issue that I was talking to Nasser yesterday, and I asked him, well, what happened if I carry in Dubai a lockpick and I get stopped by the police?
Yes.
What happened?
يا جماعة جيل.
Okay. Perfect. So, because you could see
لا أنت ما تحكي فيه. جماعة شو إذا واحد ضبط شخص ومعاه طفاشة. لا طفاشة بجيبه. شو إجراءات متخذينها؟
Okay, that was an easy answer.
أول شيء تكون حالة اشتباه.
يكون مشبوه يعني.
تكون حالة اشتباه ونتأكد في الفترة اللي ضبط فيها هل في بلاغات.
Okay, this be suspect and they will check in the record in this time there's any complaint or report some stealing in this area, but it will be found.
Well,
but anybody knows exactly what a pick is?
Yeah, we want to make sure that you understand not only what a normal lockpick looks like.
What about if I'm carrying a screwdriver? No, right?
Okay.
What if I'm carrying a bomb key?
Bomb key. ما يعرفوا شو bomb key.
It's uncommon.
Here's the thing.
It's a question. What's the difference between this one and this one?
That's all the same stuff.
Same.
Okay. So you guys have to know to recognize the bomb key.
Yeah, you should take back.
يعرفون إن في أي واحد مفاتيح فتحته مشتبه شيكته حصلت عنده مفتاح كله رايح هذا عرف إنه عنده إيش bomb key يحاول يفتح لك باب فيها.
بس لازم نحصل المطرقة معاه.
لا مش يستعمل خشب بتاع خشب بتاع مفاتيح أي شيء مش شرط يكون مطرقة.
You need to take back to all of your agencies, then we'll break for breakfast. You need to take back information to all of your agencies, so that all of your field people are alerted.
يعني أنتم المفروض هالمعلومات تنقلونها لجماعتكم على اساس يكون على درايه بالمعلومات هذه على اساس يعرفون شو المواضيع هذه اذا مسكوا على واحد يشوفهم. تفضل.
عندي سؤال. طبعا هو تكلم عن طريقه تلحين الاطفال. وقال هناك عده طرق. انا كخبير كيف اعرف الطريقه بعدم وجود طبعا الان؟ هذه تهمني النقطه.
اوكي. نعرض الان الفورنسيك هذا. He was asking about yesterday you mentioned different types of as forensic examiner, how I know this way is like picking, this way is bumping,
Oh, because there's going to be marks.
so how I know
Different kinds of marks.
division, but this type of opening the door.
how do I know they tried to bump open the door?
No, I know this is opened by bumping, or by picking, or by other ways.
Because there's Marc
يختلف على نوعية الأشكال الآثار الموجودة.
ونقدر نربط بالقضايا دي.
Can we mix by this case? For example, it happened like in one place stealing by opening by technique of the lock. After one day, other place, second place,
Oh, yeah. Well,
they can connect all together.
yes, well, theoretically, okay, it depends. If they use the same technique and the locks have brass pins, which are relatively
نظريا
soft.
ممكن إذا كان استخدام نفس التقنية والبن من النحاس لين.
Then, if the perpetrators are using the same techniques, then there should be relatively common markings.
وإذا يستخدم نفس التقنية هيكون هناك علامات مشتركة.
Now, again, this gets more complicated because it depends what the combination of the key is in any given lock. So the lock, let's say it's a bumping attack.
Okay.
Let's say that the combination is almost straight across. Let's say 4-6-4-6-4. Okay? That lock is going to be theoretically a lot easier to bump than burglary site B, where it's 2-7-3-6-5.
Okay. هني يقول الآثار المشكلة شوف وضعية البساتن في كل قفل. وضعية البساتن في كل قفل مختلف في الدرجات، مثلا هذا 2-4-2-4-2-4 هذا ممكن فتح بسهولة الآثار البسيطة. إذا في بستن مثلا 5-6-5-2-1 يعني وايد شغل فهاي الآثار تكون وايد. يقول منين الإشكالية حتكون؟ الإشكالية في الآثار، قوة الآثار موجودة فيها قوة الآثار في هاي على حسب شكل البساتن اللي في القفل.
Well, let's just take a break.
We'll take a break and then we'll show you different keys. That would be.
No.
Or are we supposed to do it?
Okay, never mind. نبدأ نسمونه بريك ولا بريك بعدين نكمل على فحص القصة الجنائية. السلام عليكم. نباشر إن شاء الله المحاضرة أو البرزنتيشن، بس قبل نباشر في كثير من الشباب ما يعرف بعض البعض أو ما يعرفون الجهات، فبالتالي باب المعرفة أو التعارف فببدأ بنفسي من البداية ثم نبدأ كل واحد يقول اسمه والجهة اللي يعملها فقط. الدولة مثلا من الإمارات أو من دبي أو البحرين أو من الكويت، الاسم والجهة فقط هذا أساس الجماعة يعرفون بعض البعض. أخوكم مقدم ناصر الشابسي من شغل دبي لما تحدث. نبدأ من الجماعة من هني من اليمين.
عبد الله المهيري من شغل دبي.
اللي صوتك.
لازم فهد عبد الله متفق.
الرائد ماجد السالم، الإدارة العامة للأدلة الجنائية السعودية.
الرائد ياسر البري، المملكة العربية السعودية، إدارة جدة.
الرائد الداحي السبيعي طبعا السعودية.
ملازم أول فضيلة العوضي من الكويت.
رائد سعيد دريل من شرطة دبي.
لازم أول طارق الدوشي شرطة دبي.
نقيب علي السويدي شرطة دبي.
لازم محمد القهوي شرطة دبي.
لازم عبد الله اليماحي من شرطة دبي.
نقيب محمد غياث البحرين.
صلاح فراغ من البحرين.
علي عبد السلام من البحرين.
لازم هو عبد الله مطروق من الكويت.
رائد متعب العتيبي من السعودية.
سعد خبير خالد الرئيسي شرطة دبي.
سعد خبير عبد الله العيوي شرطة دبي.
لازم أول قادم شرطة دبي. أنا بس أقول محمد
حماد حسني مدير المختبر الجنائي شرطة دبي.
مقدم سالم المعمري شرطة عمان المختبر الجنائي.
ولازم محمود الدباني شرطة عمان مختبر جنائي.
عقيد محمد حبيب من مختبر
يعني مواد
ماجد المريسي هل صوتك ماجد المريسي من البحرين
قيصر بلال من البحرين قيصر بلال
جواب الحسن الخالدي من السعودية
عادل الحمداني من السعودية.
I'm Ehsan Rabari from SATM, the Business Development Manager.
هذا الشركة الراعية. طبعا المحاضرين معروفين مارك توبايس وتوبي من الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية.
Tell us where everybody's from.
Huh?
Tell us where everybody's from. Oman, Saudi Arabia,
They came
Kuwait.
from Oman, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and from Emirates. Okay. Okay, let's continue now.
Good. Okay, Toby.
Okay. Before I just went through each of your tables and left one bottom pin, one top pin, one spring. Okay. You guys really want to know about tool marks and where you can get those tool marks for different attacks, bumping, picking, breaking, vibration of the lock. Okay.
تقول البروجرام بدون الآثار المادية اللي هي آثار الآلات على الكود سواء بالأساليب المختلفة اللي هو عن طريق الطرق أو بالطفاشة أو بأساليب أخرى.
So you all guys are examiners, so I want you to take a look at the pin that has the pointing tip. That is the bottom pin, okay? All those pins are usually made of brass, okay? But if you look at that pin, it don't look like brass, okay? It's a different color.
بالنسبة هو الآن يقول أنا اهتمامنا حيكون على البستم. ما تكون البراس البستم براس.
Yes, it's a brass.
طبعا والبستم عادة ما يكون من مادة النحاس.
Okay, and you see the other pin that you have is the top pin, and it looks like a brass pin. Okay? The bottom pin, some manufacturers coat it with some hardened material to make it more hard in order it doesn't get
It's wear resistant.
for wear resistant for the key going in and out.
Now what I understand now, the button piston is for the key.
Okay. Is where the key goes.
And the other
the top pin.
It is the metal. It is less harder than.
It's the same material,
Okay.
brass, but this is coated with a harder material for wear resistant.
هو طبعا عادة يكون في نظام السلندرات اثنين مسادر علوي وسفلي وكلهم من النحاس بس البستم السفلي يكون مغطى طبقة عليه اللي هو كوتد مطلوب مادة صلبة تكون شوي على اساس كثرة استعمال المفتاح اللي فيه دخول وخروج ما يجي يتأثر مع الوقت كثير.
And that harder material can affect also your the marks that we can get on.
والمادة اللي تنحط على الكوتنج اللي على البستن يأثر على الآثار ما يخلي الآثار واضحة بشكل بعد يعني.
So it's going to be different marks on a solid brass pin than a pin that has that hardened coating.
بيكون فرق طبعا لما يكون البستن اللي مو مغطى بطبقة مع البستن المغطى بطبقة أو كوتنج.
Okay. So there's some manufacturers that don't coat those pins, and that is excessive. With time, you get excessive wear on those pins also.
بعض المصانع ما تحط طبقة على هالبساتن ولكن تحصل آثار حلوة عليها.
Okay. On bumping, everybody wants to know markings on the pins.
في نظام الطرق أو فترة الطرق كل واحد بيعرف شو الآثار اللي حصلت داخل البساتن.
Okay. So you basically know more or less where to spec the markings on the pin.
يفترض تعرفون وين حصل الآثار موجودة على البن.
If you remember yesterday, a video that we did with medical, Marc opened that tune brand new in 7 seconds.
تذكرون البارحة في عرض الفيديو لما فتح مارك عن طريق البامب كفل ميديكو كان جديد في 7 ثواني هذا الفيديو.
Also, not all the locks pump the same way. Some you have to apply more energy, and some actually you have to be more like some sort of tapping of the key.
مو كلهم بنفس المستوى من القوة، منهم يكون بقوة أكثر ومنهم بقوة أقل، يعتمد على تصميم مال القفل.
So if we could make a forensic analysis for the lock that Marc pumped on that video, it would be probably very difficult to assess that it was pumped open.
Okay. إذا حبينا نسوي فحص جنائي عن البارحة اللي فتح في طرقة طرقتين بيكون صعب تشوف الآثار لأنها ما يعني طرقة واحدة طرقتين بفتح القفل فالآثار ما تكون واقفة بشكل قوي.
Okay, now in this regard, this is really important, and I'm going to walk around showing you. This is one of the keys that I use to bump open that medical lock.
يقول الآن بيمشي حواليكم ويوريكم هذا المفتاح اللي استخدمه في فتح قفل ميديكو.
Now, why is this important? Because this is a method of covert entry.
ليش هذا مهم؟ لأن هذا
covert entry.
هذا يغطي اللي هو دخول بشكل غير قانوني.
Okay, so this key doesn't look like a normal bump key.
هذا مفتاح ما يبان بشكل كأنه مفتاح بمب كي.
This key we specially produced from a brass blank from a safety deposit box lock.
هذا عملناه من مفتاح آخر بلانك خام نحاس خاص بفتح الخزائن وليس ما له خاص بالدوام العادية.
So what you need to understand is the bump keys we showed you for normal locks, they can look like that or they can look like this. This happens to fit any keyway.
نحن مثل ما وريناكم البارحة لازم يكون من نفس المصنع والقارئ احنا بعد ايضا يكون في هذه الحالة هذا يدخل في مجرى اي مفتاح اي قفل.
So if we're talking now, these are the keys that we developed worldwide to open all the medical cylinders.
احنا هذا عملناه اساس يفتح جميع القوالين نظام السلندرات.
There's 4 keys for 5-pin, 4 keys for 6-pin locks.
في مفتاح حق 5 بساتين او 5 بساتين وفي مفاتيح مساعدين حق 6 بساتين.
And they have different depth codes and combinations depending on the locks.
يختلف المصانع في العمق في تصميم العمق مالهم في البساتين.
But the important thing is what this key looks like.
لكن أهم شيء عندكم إن تشوفون شكل المفتاح هذا شكل اللي يكون حق نظام نفس الطعم أو البوم.
Your investigators need to understand and be sensitive to what constitutes or can make a bump key.
لازم يحقق عندكم لازم يعرف كيفية صنع وكيفية تعرف أن هذا المفتاح يستخدم في البوم كي.
Because these keys, which we only make available to government, will open locks at the White House, the Pentagon, and the Royal Palace in London, just for starters.
وهذا المفتاح ممكن يفتح لك الأبواب في البيت الأبيض، البنتاغون، والقصر في بريطانيا حق ناس مبتدئين.
Okay, so very dangerous, and these, again, as you'll see, they're very simple.
خطير جدا وبسيط جدا.
So I'll walk around and show everybody these. Toby, now you can keep talking.
As we were talking, this is a burglary tool or a pick, but in the wrong hand, this is a burglary tool, a pick is a burglary tool, a bump key is a burglary tool too.
يقول لك الآن عندك هذه أداة سرقة إذا في أي خاطئة حتكون هذه أداة برجلي تول اللي هو أدوات سرقة عند الجاني وهاي حتكون أدوات سرقة عند الجاني وهذا البمب كي حيكون أيضا أدوات سرقة عند الجاني. كل الحالات ضبط على شخص فاعرفوا أن هذا كل أدوات تستخدم السرقة فتح الأبواب.
Okay. You all know how to recognize this now. You have to recognize this as.
ما تعرفون هذا حق الطفايات لازم تعرفون أيضا هذا النظام يستخدم حق فتح الأبواب.
So let me say one other thing while they're doing this. These keys, when I opened the lock in America for the headquarters of a huge publishing company who demanded that we show them how to open the locks, these keys would leave no marks. These are soft brass keys. I hit that lock 6 times, and it opened. Okay. And with very, very little energy.
Okay. لمعلوماتكم ان هذا المفتاح من النحاس هذا السوفت نود ناعمه ليلة ما بتترك اثار على البساتين اللي تكون اقصر شوي منها. يعني 6 مرات تضربها او حسب عدد المرات او اقل فتح الباب بس ما تحصلون اثار فيها.
So we're talking about, and this is typical of high security locks, like all the better ones. We'll show you the Asos, for example. Very, very good locks. But they can be bumped. But it takes, as we say, these aren't bumped, they're tapped open.
هذه يسمونها تفتح ابواب ذات امياء عاليه جدا مثل ماركة آسو وهي ثمنها جدا عالي بس تفتحها هذا الاصل.
We tap them. We don't bump them. Bumping is more energy. Tap like a 12-year-old girl opening.
احنا ما نضربهم بس ايش بشكل خفيف يعني لمسات نقرات بسيطة عليها.
Very, very, very light to open it. Well, light means no marks.
طبعا ضرب النقرات البسيطة هذه ما بترك آثار على هذا نوع النحاس.
Okay, you guys keep.
Okay, so bumping really creates a real problem for everybody.
هاي مشكلة عويصة للكل يقول لأن أكيد في فتحت ووجد آثار وصارت سرقة وصار وادعى يسمونه في بلاغ سرقة فصار المحقق محير هل ادعاء كاذب ولا صحيح؟ وتقريبا المختبر يقول لك ما في آثار فيرجع التهمة عليه هو مثلا ففي مشكلة حتصير يعني واضح هذه.
So usually high security locks were a venue that you get high security locks to protect assets, and you will think that it will require a longer time to bypass that lock.
يعني القوانين اللي هي ذات اطفال ذات حمايه عاليه هي لازم تحمل الاساس اللي هي المواد ايا كانت المواد الموجوده
Well, we're saying that high security locks has been a problem because you get those high security locks to protect you, okay, and you're trying to get more time. High security locks give you more time in compromising that lock.
Okay. القصد من وجود الأطفال ذات الحماية العالية هي تعطيل قضية الفتح، تعطيل قضية الفتح للقوانين، يعني تعطيك مدة يعني هي حتفتح ولكن مفترض تعطيك مدة مثلا نص ساعة أو ساعة لما تفتحها في البيكينج، يعني هاي فيري هاي سكيورتي، مو بأنه مثلا القوانين البسيطة اللي ممكن تفتحها في يعني دقائق معدودة أو أقل لكن الهاي سكيورتي يفترض انها تاخذ مده اطول.
Okay. On high security locks, we consider bumping a little bit more, requires a little more of expertise.
الاقفال اللي هي ذو حمايه عاليه تتطلب خبرات اعلى في مجال الفتح خاصه بعد الطرق.
Because high security locks has complement elements as for security, like sidebars, interactive pins, side millings. The keys are different, more complex.
في تصاميم الهاي سكيورتي نفسها او التأمين العالي الاقفال فيها طبعا التصميم اللي هو تعطيل اللي هو المجرى المفتاح يسوون بطريقه معينه يكون صعب دخل فيها شيء. باي باس عن
They have different they have different another layers of security.
عندهم تقطيع خاص بالمفتاح معقد شوي. بعض الامور اكثر تامين في نظريه تصميم القفل من حد ذاته. Okay.
So before it was like basically ruled out that somebody tried to pick open a high security lock because it was very difficult and it takes so much time and expertise that an investigator will rule that the lock was picked open on high security locks.
يعني قضية السكيورتي لوك انها تاخذ مدة اطول في الفتح بالتالي
will like rule out. It will never think that he will never go through the process to analyze the lock to see if the lock was by picking or.
بالنسبة للقفل ذات تأمينات عالية. أول إدراك في عند المحقق أن هذا ما فتح بشكل عن طريق فنية، يقول لا مفتوح طبيعي وأكيد داخلية، لأن هذه فيري هاي سكيورتي يعني لوك صعب إنه ينفتح بطريقة طبيعية. هذا أول تصور حيكون عند المحقق في أي قضية فيها قفل فيها نظام تأمينات عالي جدا.
That's why when government agencies, banks, or people who try to protect assets go to high security locks because they're difficult to buy.
على أساس المنشآت العسكرية أو المنشآت الكبيرة أو منشآت منظمات كبيرة تأخذ تفضل أن تكون لها تأمين طالب ذات تأمينات عالية جدا.
Bomb keys. Yes, sir.
Sorry. How can we go to do the key is more secure, and you mean in the grooves or you mean in the number of the key?
More secure.
Yeah, to be more secure. Now we saw that the difference of keys, okay? But we need to know how we say this is more secure. This key is that's from the factory. It is more secure.
How do you know if they?
Yeah. By the number of the groove?
No.
Or how is it?
Can you just tell them the question for the rest or?
Okay. سؤالك هل يعني كيف نعرف هذا القفل؟
المفتاح الان يحكم عليه، المفتاح يحكم عليه انه سيفتي من ناحيه ايش؟ من ناحيه عدد الجروف اللي فيه.
او سؤال يسال الاخ كيف نحكم ان هذا القفل او المفتاح يعتبر من التأمينات العاليه هاي سكيورتي؟
Pin toggle locks that use a pin and top pin. Doesn't matter if it has if it's a high security lock. Our research has determined that 99% can be locked if it's based on the pin tops.
How you adjust that this high security?
How you adjust the
okay. How you know that the lock is high security?
How do you know if the lock is a high security?
And from the key also.
From the key.
When I see the key.
key or from the lock. I mean, okay. For example,
remember the EVA magnetic key?
Yeah.
This is a high security lock. Okay, because it uses magnets.
But from both sides.
Yes, they have certifications also. Okay, the way that you can know that a lock is a high security is to look for their certification. In the US is UL 437, which is a high security certification for that.
اوكي في شهادات تصدر للكوارث والاقفال ذات تأمينات عاليه مصدقه من قبل حكومات بعض الحكومات. انت في الشرق الاوسط ما في شهادات ها؟ ما في تصديق. عندهم في امريكا عندهم شهاده بدات
UL 437.
UL 47 هذه شهاده خاصه بالكوالين. تصديق الكوالين مدى قوتها ومدى قوه تاميناتها. اوكي اذا عندهم هاي الشركات هاي الشهادات هذه فهذه تعتبر من الاقفال والكوالين وماركات معينه ما عندهم شهادات تعتبر من التامينات القويه.
Okay, and in Europe you also have certification. There's labs that test these locks and
وفي
tells
اوروبا
you how secure.
في شهادات من النوع وعندهم مختبرات في اوروبا كثيره لفحص هذه الاقفال هذا.
Sorry, if we have two keys and in the normal style, normal model, one of them is by 5 deep, another one 6. In this case, can we say the number of the second one is more secure from the first one? It's normal for both. And what about the deep, the length of the deep?
If it's a pin tuner, you maybe won't be able to bump it, but you cannot have all the cylinders with the same combination. That's not how you rate locks. You know, when there's labs that test and they go to a protocol for different attacks, and if they pass, it's considered a high security lock. So you don't do anything to the lock. You don't look for the key, you look for their certification. And that creates another problem. The labs don't test for bumping.
اوكي يقول لك طبعا تدور على شهادات مصدقه من قبل هذه المصانع مصدقه ولكن عندك والمختبرات هذه اللي تصدق شهادات ولكن عندك مشكله ثانيه ان المختبرات ما تفحص كل الاصلاح من ضمنها اللي هي بامبنج طريقه الارتطام اذا تفتح ولا لا.
I think it's useful to understand this protocol for our examination.
Well, the thing is, you can get the protocols.
Oh, you know what? I've got a copy of UL 437 and 15630.
Yeah, because it's the other UL 437. Yeah, but it is meaningless if they don't cover bumping. We have to take apart where it's high security locks and regular locks. High security locks are right here. More difficult to pick, open, bypass. Keys are key control. The keys are patents. They're very complex in mechanisms. And a pin tuner is a basic key.
يقول لك ممكن تاخذ اطفال قوالين ذات تامينات عاليه جدا وفي نظام سلندرات يعتبر من يسمونه من القوانين ضعيفه. تأمينات طبعا شرحت البارحه اللي هو في قضيه اللي هو نظامين في نظام واحد وفي بعض القوانين حصل ثلاث نظام في نظام واحد. فبالتالي الهاي سكيورتي هذه اللي ممكن لا تقدر تسوي عليها بيكينج ولا تقدر عليها تسوي بامبنج ولا تقدر تسوي عليها فرق اخرى الا بصعوبه هاي تعتبر هاي سكيورتي. اما مثلا القفول عاديه لان متداوله في الاسواق مثل هذا السلندر هذا ممكن it's considered not high security.
هو الأخ بيسأل على الكوالين العادية اللي هي بتتداول في الأسواق.
أيوه.
في منها 7 سلندر 7 grooves. Okay? And 6 and 5 and 3 for the small blocks. Is the 7th cylinder more powerful power than the other or not? That is the question difficult or not? Because it
can be difficult, but
to combination between the,
you know, my experience is made bumping. It's very effective. I can pick a lock in 2 seconds. It doesn't matter what combination it is. You can have one cylinder with that combination, with very difficult combination, as you say, 5, 6, 4, 5, 5. And I can pick it in 2 seconds, and I have another cylinder with the same, exactly the same combination. I never picked it. So it's about tolerance, how wear and tear that has that cylinder. But to say it's more, to guarantee you there is more security.
You mean the time is controlled between all.
Yes. They have wear and tear, and it happens. You have 2 cylinders, key alike, one door here, one door here. You go here, open the lock, and go here and say, what's wrong with this lock? And it's the same combination. You finally open whatever. But some combinations are more easy. It can be more easy, but it's not a rule. But it's sometimes it's not a rule.
لا قضية ايش؟ في شكل ساتر يعني وحدة عمق كبير صغير عمق اذا كان يعني بس النقطة بسيط فرق بينهم كثير يعني.
But if you remove it,
this repairs before. You see? And then he can
سويت 5 6 7 خلاص يعني الحين بتتطور يعني.
So it's not you guys who made the decision what cylinder is secure or not. It's the labs that test this cylinder and give the certification that they pass 4th entry, picking, and covering. That's what constitutes a high security lock. And they're more difficult to get access to blanks and copies of the key, because that's the weakest point of
I think if you show the best piece of the picking, you can open it direct.
Sorry?
When you show the best piece, because you have different piece of the picking, of the pick material. In this case, you can open it direct. You can use it and to open it direct, the locks, no problem.
Okay.
For the number, for the proof, I mean for the number, for the proof.
No, I don't get your question.
I mean, if you have 5 or 6 proofs and use the best piece of the pick, in this case, can you use it direct to open it direct, no, without long time?
It's about,
because in the first we guess the number of the group is control about secure or not secure.
The number of the groups.
Yeah, of the deep.
We're gonna give you some. We're gonna give you. Roy is gonna go. We're gonna find some PowerPoints to show you really what is the difference between a regular pin tumbler and high security lock. It's not about the distance of the group, it's different elements that they add to add more security to the lock.
قضية التأمينات ما دخل في قضية العمق أو العدد البساتين.
وكان أول الفكرة.
لا أقول على تصميم قضية تصميم الحديث الآن القوانين في التأمينات هذه الآن ما صار قضية التأمين أو تقولها تأمينة 7 تأمينات ممتاز لا ما صار الآن الموضوع هذا.
طيب عفوا.
تصميم الآن صار تصميم ثاني
طيب في بعضها شكل 2 لاين اللي هي الهرم بالنسبه للجروب
يعني جروب كرنينه
في بعض تجيك لا مربع فعمليه التصميم تبعها تكون جايه عباره عن شكل يعني اقصد بالشكل هذا القاعده في بعض المفاتيح تمام تجيك بالطريقه دي تمام وبعضها تكون هرمي. هل في هذه الحاله في فرق بينهم في عمليه فتحها تكون اسهل واصعب؟
الديزاين
ايه في المفاتيح. بالتالي البنز
نفسه. Is trying to design a lock for him or?
لا he is asking the profile of the key.
Okay.
And sometimes like square and sometimes triangle And this kind of design is more difficult for safety than the normal design or the profiler key.
Depending on the lock, again, you can have a profile that is very weird and you think is very secure, and you can stick a paper clip up and open it. Okay? I don't go by looks, I don't go what the manufacturer tells me about the lock. I analyze the lock and see how I can open it. Once I open it, I can tell you the lock is secure or not. That's what the testing labs also do. You can have like a skeleton key or those flat keys. There's flat keys very complex, okay, with sides on each side, so you have to move levers on both sides. So you look at the key and say, that's a hell of the key. That is a very good lock. And then you have a tool that can open that lock in 20 seconds. So, how do you rate that as a secure? Secures against whom, when, what? You know what I'm saying?
Okay. حتى لو كانت فاتحة معقدة أشكال معقدة في مفتاح في عدة أشكال ولكن أنت في فحوصات مختبرة تصير على أساس تحدد مدى تأمين هذه. يقول لك يعني تولز لشيء مفتاح بشكل معقد تفتح لك 20 ثانية ما نقول عليه هذا سكيور ولكن التأمين من وعلى من تسوي التأمين شو التأمين هسوي الكفر هذا.
So that's why to prevent all this confusion that's why we have a standard. You know? So they test, they look for what tests to perform on each lock and they rate these locks. So, but do you want to go with the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the PowerPoint.
Okay. Do you have high security locks?
No, we want
in public?
Yeah. No, yesterday for forensic we started to be.
Well, the question is, should we?
No, I don't. I think we're going to cover too much about
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here, until we get those back.
Okay, so we're gonna go now. Any questions so far? Somebody wants to know anything more about bumping, high security locks? No questions? Okay, we're gonna go up on forensics now. I'm gonna show you some pictures about what type of mark you're gonna get with different attacks. Okay, so that's the bottom pin. Okay.
So we're going to show different indications of marks. And then we're going to we'll switch presentations, and we've got diagrams where you ought to expect marks for the different kinds of attacks. Okay? So what we're going to do here is just go through. This isn't complicated.
بالنسبة الآن نبدأ الآن في قضية اللي هو الفحص الجنائي يسمونه التجاوز الفني البايباس. Okay.
Okay. So I shot these with microscopes years ago when we were doing this to begin with.
أنا صورت من 10 سنوات في تصوير ميكروسكوبي لما بدينا في عمل هذا الشيء. طبعا هاي راس البساتم اللي صغار الميكروسكوب تنتج فيها ميكروسكوبيا. طبعا الاثار موجود واضح انكم تشوفوا الاثار على راس البساتم نفسها.
Okay, so basically there's a lot of different areas as Toby discussed that we're looking for marks, but you have to understand and always keep in mind as you do with any tool marks what makes the marks.
طبعا انت السؤال اللي يطرح نفسه شو الآلة اللي تسوي هاي الآثار؟ نحن طبعا كل شيء يصير كل آلة تترك آثار، لكن الآن السؤال اللي يطرح شو الآلة اللي تترك هالآثار؟
When I was trained in Denmark by one of the best guys in the world that does this for insurance companies, he said, look, this is a 5-minute examination.
قال يقول لما بديت اتدرب على افضل فاحص في العالم من الدنمارك على قضيه دربنا على موضوع فحص الكوالين. قال اسمع هذا الفحص صار 5 دقائق.
So there's no absolutes, okay? You're not guaranteed to find marks or not find marks based on any kind of attack technique. Now, if I pry the door open with a wedge or a screwdriver, you know I'm going to leave a mark. That's what you guys normally look for.
عموما يقول بالنسبه للاثار الصغيره هذه يقول لك ليش صرت حصل الاثار والاثار؟ لان مو مثل الاثار لما تفتح الباب بمفك ولا كذا بعلوه وتشوف تحصل اثار آلة واضحه على الباب.
But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the internal areas of the lock.
احنا نتكلم الان عن المواضيع الداخليه الفحص الداخلي باللغه نفسها.
So if we understand how to open these locks, then you have an understanding of what is likely to produce marks. But likely doesn't mean that it's going to happen.
بالنسبه للفحوص الداخليه للاطفال لازم تعرف انت ميكانيكيه القفل او طريقه عمل القفل نفسه كيف تفتح على اساس تحصل اساس شو الاثار ممكن تحصلها هذه في داخل هذه، وهي اثار لاكلي قصدها بسيطه بس مش شرط هالاثار البسيطه ادت لفتح الباب.
And if you have marks, it's very difficult to say when those marks were made and if the lock was open.
وإذا تحصلت الآثار ما تقدر
when the marks were made,
متى صارت الآثار and
if the lock was open.
وإذا القفل فتح.
Because the suspect may have attempted to open the lock and may have not been successful.
ممكن الجاني أو المشتبه حاول يفتح الباب ولم يتمكن فتح الباب.
The other issue is there may have been multiple attempts on the same lock by different people.
واحتمال الثاني إن يكون عدة محاولات عدة أشخاص على نفس القفل.
So somebody may have tried to pick the lock a month ago.
ممكن حاول واحد يفتح شخص من شهر.
Or somebody may have tried to bump the lock and not been successful, and you know things happen very unusually. Somebody else may have tried to open the lock and may have opened the lock a week later, 2 days later, whatever.
احتمال واحد حاول يفتح الباب بس ما نجح وبعدها بأسبوع واحد ثاني حاول وفتحها.
So unless, and we tried this with a scanning electron microscope with not much success, if I take a pick, which is what we really thought we could do, and I rake the pins or I scratch the pins or I move it along the inside of the lock.
احنا سوينا فحص بطريق ميكروسكوب الكتروني. سوينا تجربة دخلنا بين طفاش داخل، عملنا احتكاكات جانبية وعلى البستل وما حصلنا نجاح في آثار واقعة بالله.
Unless there's something very, very unique about the tip of the pick or the key that you're using for a bump key or the vibrating pick, it'll leave marks, but they're not identifiable marks against the pins or the internal components. Yeah, you won't have a match because first of all, you're working with a really fine surface.
نيجي تتعامل مع أسطح بسيطة جدا، مش أسطح كبيرة تستوعب المقارنات. أنا بس باختصر إيش اللي معنى الكلام اللي قاله. تتعامل مع أسطح بسيطة جدا اللي عبارة عن البستن نفسه وعن الآلة اللي تستخدم داخل القفل اللي هي عبارة عن طفاشة أو بكي أو الفابريتر اللي فتح الأبواب. هذه الأسطح تتعامل مع أسطح بسيطة جدا، فأنت ما تقدر تسوي عليها حتى ضغط الآلة تسوي عليها مقارنة ميكروسكوبية، لأن بس تقدر تقول إنها فتحت بالطريقة أو احتمال فتحت بالطريقة هذه، ولكن هل إنه تقدر تربط هذا بهالآلة اللي استخدمت؟ صعب، هذا اللي يريد وضحه.
So I don't have the surface area on a pick tip, for example, to leave really individual markings.
ما تلك علامات مميزة مثل العلامات المميزة اللي ممكن أرجع عليها وأقول هاي الآلة من ضمن نفس الكفر استخدمها بس أساس علامة مميزة أسوي ماركينج عليها وتربطها.
So like a screwdriver has got a wide area.
المفك في مساحة كبيرة اللي يقدر يسوي أثر كبير.
And so you have the opportunity, because of the deformations and the way the screwdriver was made, to leave unique marks.
ممكن تستدل المفك على العلامات الكثيرة اللي خلاها مميزة اللي تربطها بنفس الآلة اللي تستخدمها مكان الحادث إذا ضبط الآلة أو تربطها بمكان حادث، لأن المساحة كبيرة في عمل مقارنة.
So, but with a pick tip or these bypass tools, we have a very, very limited surface area.
بالأدوات الموجودة اللي هو الطفاشة أو الآلة تستخدم مجال المساحة اللي تفحصها جدا صغيرة جدا في الفحص.
So the bottom line is we're trying to imprint unique characteristics or transfer from one piece of metal to another.
باختصار احنا نحاول نشوف علامات
We're trying to transfer markings or deformations or unique characteristics from one piece of metal to another.
احنا نحاول نشوف الآثار اللي ترتكب من آلة معدنية على آلة معدنية أخرى مثل البستن مع الطفاشة.
So essentially, when you're looking for a tool mark, you have a harder tool, leaving a mark on a softer material.
احنا لما نسوي فحص آثار الآلات ندور على أثر آلة قاسية أو صلبة أكثر، صلابة أكثر على سطح آخر يكون أقل صلابة أو soft أو ناعم.
So if you have it's just like if you take the head of a pin and try to make a mark, unless there's something unique other than the diameter of the pin, you're not going to be able to identify that mark because there's no characteristics that you can transfer.
أنت بتاخذ تعمل فحص إذا على ضفاشة على راس بستن. راس البستن هذا إذا ما في علامة مميزة يعني تثبت إن هذا كانت يعني تحدد الآلة، يعني هاي الآلة تكون في هذا المكان أو على هذا البستن.
So, for example, if you had a pick that wasn't at a point and had enough surface area and had its own fingerprint, so to speak, and you ran that across a piece of brass in the lock. Okay, you have a pick.
Okay.
And let's say it's wide enough so it has deformities. It has unique characteristics.
Okay.
And you run that across the lock while you're trying to pick it and across the pins.
Okay.
If the brass in the lock, which it usually is softer than the pick tip, then you're going to see tracks inside the lock. Now, you may be able to then match, if there's characteristics on what touched it, then you may be able to match the two. But otherwise, that's a real problem, especially on pins because it may be harder metal.
إذا كان عندك أداة تولز طفاشة فيها مساحة كبيرة شوية، تسوي لك علامة مميزة على البستن، احتمال ممكن تسوي ماتشنج معاها. Okay, what about this one? You see this one, when you put it like this, sometimes you do it by hand, and it's soft and
yeah, but see, that's different because you have a wider area.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what I'm saying. You have you have a much wider surface area.
Okay.
To make, and so we're going to talk about that next. But you take something like this. Where's the material? Where's the information to transfer?
Okay. Look at the pins. I have one example.
Okay. في طبعا هذا اثر شوف المساحه بمساحه بسيطه جدا. فانت المساحه هذه لما تسوي اثر على يسمونه على راس البستن كمقارنه للاله هي استخدمت فينا بس ولا ما تقدر، لان المساحه معلومات الاثر اللي في البستن ما تعطيك زي مثلا معلومات اللي اثر مفك، لان الاثر المخطوطه الدقيقه فيها كثيره معلومات كثيره تقدر تحدد، لكن هذا صعب تحددها لان المساحه صغيره. هذا الاثر مثلا هذا مساحه كبيره هاي كفحص ميكروسكوبي اتكلم عنه. لما تعمل اثر وتسوي بشكل قوي، اذا حصلت اثر على المجرى هذا ممكن تسوي مقارنه بهذا مع الاثر آلة ثانيه، بس هذه تكون صعب عليك.
Now, what I can say is, if you let's just say you have a very wide track inside the lock.
إذا عندك في المجرى مساحة كبيرة.
One of the things you could say is a narrow pick didn't make a wide track, or a wide pick didn't make a narrow track. Okay, so let's say inside of a lock, you find little pick tracks like that, okay? Scratches, gouges. Okay? Now, let's say that what you find inside of the lock is that wide. But the suspect pick is that wide. It would be very difficult for that to make that track.
Okay. إذا حصل أثر راس بستن بهذا العرض وجاء أو مشتبه الضبط عنده آلة بهذا العرض حافته، طبعا مستحيل يقول هذا الآثار عمل لك هالآثار هذا، طبعا استبعد في الحالة يعني كحجم العرض الأثر إذا كان مثلا في بعض الطفاشات احجامه شوي اكبر عن الثاني على حسب ارتياح المشتبه في استخدام الاله. اذا كان عرض الاثر اكبر او عرض الاله اكبر من عرض الاثر الموجوده في البستن، تقول صعب ان هذا حدث من هذه الاله.
So this is an investigative tool. What we're really looking for is what's not supposed to be there.
اوكي، هذا نسبة تحقيق اثر الالات، لكن احنا شو ندور؟ يعني ندور على شيء مفترض ما يكون موجود داخل بساتين او قوارير.
So a key, these marks here,
هاي الاثار الموجودة على البستن.
all of these indentations and scratches and gouges, these are not normal for a key to make.
هاي الآثار اللي أشكالها مختلفة على البستن، هذه الآثار غير طبيعية تكون موجودة على البستن نفسه، وليس من المفتاح.
These would not be normal.
هذه غير طبيعية أيضا.
When a key runs through a lock, the tumblers ride up and down on the key. There's not a lot of friction, there's not a lot of resistance, even if the key is cut poorly.
Okay. يعني المفتاح اللي يمشي في
It's called wear.
المفتاح اللي يمشي في المجرى ويمشي على البساتين يمشي بشكل تلقائي او بشكل سموث او بسيط، يعني بسيطه، لكن حتى لو كان في نوع من الخشونه في الدخول بس ما يترك الاثار تعود عليه المفتاح للمشي على هالبساتين هاي.
So cuts on keys aren't normally sharp. They're not supposed to be, because then they'll wear the pins and the lock won't work properly. Keys are designed to glide through the lock, and pins are designed to ride on the metal with very little wear.
تصميم المفتاح مع البساتين يكون تصميم انه يمشي تلقائيا مع البستن، انه يعني يمشي تحته عند او يعني يحمله بطريقه حركه متناسقه ما بين البستن وما بين المفتاح. المفتاح ما يكون قطع حاد ولا يكون البستن قطع حاد، يكون بشكل مائل على اساس يكون توافق بينهم.
So although ultimately your job is to try to match a suspect or a tool that was inside that lock, that what your first level is to say, okay, this lock indicates that it was opened by non-normal techniques.
انت تبغى تربط آلة مع آلة مشتبه مع المفتاح، انت لازم تحط في بالك انك اول شيء من الاثار انك تقول ممكن هذا المفتاح او القفل فتح بطريقه غير طبيعيه. النورمال.
So that's really what we're looking for. Now, we gave the example yesterday. Let's say that a guy is a worker, maybe he's got a toolbox, he's got picks, then there's some material in his toolbox. Oil, lint, grease, whatever.
المشكلة عنده مثلا طفاش ومو اشياء عنده اويل، جريس، اي شيء عنده يشيل مع الفلوس اللي عامله.
Yeah, and then he inserts that into the lock.
يدخل هذه داخل القفل نفسه.
Now obviously, if there's a material transfer between the tool and the pins or the size of the pins inside the lock, you're going to look for that. That's a good match. Okay, let's say I have a residue on my pick.
Okay.
And I stick that pick inside of the lock.
Okay.
And I transfer some of that residue into the lock.
Okay.
When you cut that lock open, you're going to see that residue. Now you may be able to match that residue for spectrography.
Okay.
That's a different issue.
Okay. في طريقة إن في شوائب يمكن أثناء دخل الطفاش شوائب دخلت معاه يسمونه داخل مجرى القفل، سواء البساتين أو مجرى القفل. هذه الشوائب موجودة عند المشتبه في جيبه، مثل كان حامل شوائب مثل زيت، غريز، ما أعرف إيش. أنت ممكن تسوي ماتشنج بالشوائب الموجودة في داخل القفل مع الشوائب الموجودة عنده. ها؟ صعب. يصير difficult this one. It's difficult.
Depends how much is in the lock.
يعتمد
And what it is.
يعتمد على شو نوع الشوائب.
It's common because you
وكميات.
are talking about the grease. Grease is common.
الموجود
You know, it's not a unique.
It may not be unique, but it's also an indication if you've got the same
Yeah,
material.
it's not conclusive. You know.
No, it's not conclusive.
Well, the idea also.
We want to know if something was introduced in that lock other than the normal key.
You know,
To open it.
نحن نشوف شو الاشياء اللي داخل فتحة غير المفتاح.
That's the problem. A lot of times it's not going to be conclusive, but it's an indication. So if you got a suspect and he's got lock picks and the lock was open and the material, something was stolen, now you can make a pretty educated statement that says this lock, we believe this lock was picked open. We got this guy with lock picks. Okay, that's the value.
يعطيك مؤشرات وليس كدليل. مؤشرات في قضية تحقيق. قضية حقيقية.
سعيدات المحكمة يعني قلت الشك صار.
ما عليه أنت الآن أنت كثير شغل جنائي فحص جنائي. كثير من الأدلة ما تقدر تجزم على الأدلة بشكل قاطع. كثير تؤدي إلى مؤشرات إلى شخص معين. هذا الشخص معين تعطيك جد البحث التحري إنه شو عليه جد الدليل المناسب له. صح ولا لا؟ بس تعطيك على الأقل مؤشر تنديكيت إن هذا هو هذا الشخص أو هالآلة أو هكذا علمنا هالآلة.
Okay.
We have tried with this, and actually we're gonna do it. We're gonna give you some samples, okay? We're gonna make some marks. We're gonna bump it. We're gonna try to pick it. Use the big gun, okay? We're gonna get marks. You're gonna know what type of tool was used to make those marks, okay? But as Mark says before, it's going to be very inconclusive also, saying the lock was open. Usually when we have talked to different labs, they say, okay, you can send a lock, this lock has been open. You know, it's not in your locking position, it should be like this. Right now it's open. I picked it open, okay? If the lab take this lock and take it apart and say, yeah, you picked it open. We see that. Now, if I send the lock and I never pick this lock and say, okay, was this lock open? And I say, well, it was marks of pick. But we cannot be conclusive that the lock was open. Okay? But you can find a lock like this also. So then you can be also conclusive, hey, what was done to the lock to get it in this position, in an open position? That's what happened with locks. You open the lock and then you lock it back. It's not what happened with doors. When you force open a door, the door is wide open, so you say, yeah, the door was open.
مشكلة القفل يقول يعني مختبرات يعطوا لهم مختبر مثلا كذي وتشوف هذا بشكل غير طبيعي فتعرف ان هذا القفل اوريدي فتح بطريقة فنية طفاشة بس اذا بتقول مثلا مفتاح قفل وانت فحصته وشفت آثار بس ما تقدر تقول فتح ولا ما فتح انت تقول في آثار تستخدم آثار ولكن ما تقدر تجزم ان هذا هالآثار فتحتها ولا لا؟
وضع طبيعي. وضع طبيعي لأن المفتاح هو بيعمل عملية فصل للأسطوانتين بيخلي البساتم دي فوق والبساتم دي تحت.
زين. لا هو اتكلم عن
وبعدين ممكن
الآثار يقول أنا ممكن هو يقول أنت ممكن تشوف آثار داخل بس في الوضع طبيعي بس هالآثار هل فتح الباب ولا ما فتح الباب ما تقدر تقول حتى هذا الكلام هذا الكلام اللي يقوله وايضا يقول ممكن الواحد يفتح الباب الطفاشه ويقفل الباب الطفاشه ولكن هل تستطيع انت تقول ان هذا تجزم ان هذا الباب فتح ولا غير فتح؟ لا ما تقدر تقول في اثار داخل غير طبيعيه. يمكن تحاول تفتح ما فتح.
Now, let me ask you a really good question. Toby, draw me a step key from high step to low step, so when you pull the key will be pulled out of the lock. Okay, I have a lock, just like this, and it's open. Okay? Key's not in it, the plug is turned. How to get that?
يقول الآن هذا حساس يسمونه هذا مثلا سلندر قفل سلندر بطريقة يعرف انك تفتحها كيف وصل هذا
Are you sure?
Could not get out.
Are you sure?
Yes, because the bends, I think.
ترجم بالعربي
Cuts on the key?
Am I picking this one?
No. Let's say I didn't pick that one. How else could I? If you come to a crime scene and that's on the door,
This way the key will not get out.
how do you know that?
It's locked inside.
Okay. So the question is, how would you? Let's just say this lock. You come to a crime scene, the door is open, and the lock.
It's open but blocked because they can.
Yeah. Okay.
No, this is the normal cylinder. It's like that. So you find the lock like this.
Okay. Or at an angle.
Yeah.
Okay. How is it possible that this lock could look like it's picked and not be picked?
كيف يعرفون ان هذا القفل تم فتحه بطريقه فنيه طفاشه او بدون طفاشه بالطريقه هاي؟
From the direction. You're getting here.
No. How would you turn that plug? How would that plug be turned without it being picked?
كيف هذا المحور يدير من غير ما يسوي طفاشه؟
So, yeah. So you're on the witness stand.
انت الان في منصه شهاده.
And I'm a defense lawyer.
وانا محامي متهم.
First, y'all hate me.
اول شيء بتكرهني.
That's number one.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, no, you're not sorry at all. Okay, so and I'm going to say, and you say this lock had to be picked because it's open, and that's it. And there's no key stuck in the lock. So what if I say, okay, sir, and what if do you know what the combination looked like for this lock? Did you take this lock apart and tell me what the key code was for this lock?
ممكن يقول لكم محامي ممكن تفتح لي هذا القفل وتشوف لي شو الكود الشفره داخل القفل؟
Because that's the first question I'm going to ask you. And you're going to say, well, no, I didn't. Why not? Well, because the lock was open. And then I'm going to ask you, how difficult do you think this lock would be to pick? And you're going to say, how would I know? And I'm going to say, well, you're the expert. You're the certified expert. You're supposed to know. And then I'm going to say, well, what if this lock was really, really difficult to pick? Would that possibly change your opinion?
إذا قلت لك أنا هذا القفل صعوبة جدا فتح بطريقة فنية، شو رأيك في الموضوع؟
And what if there were 3 mushroom pin tumblers in that lock to make it even more difficult to pick?
وليش ما يكون بساطة من شكل الفطر داخل 3 صعب تفتح طريقة الطفاش.
And did you find any indications on any of the pins that this was picked from the inside?
وفحص داخلية على أساس هل الفحص داخلية على أساس تشوف البساطة في آثار طفاش ولا لا؟
And do you know whether the pins are worn in this lock?
تعرف مواضع البساطة في هذا الطفاش.
Dismiss.
So just a moment. I'm not done. This is what we teach, okay? So then I'm going to say, if you had taken apart this lock, rather than jumping to your conclusion that it had to have been picked, you would have figured out that the key code was, let's say, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
إذا احنا فتحت الجوال شفت شفرة القفل عشان كتبت انت هذه المعايير مالها
2, 3, 4, 4 Marc.
Okay. 2, 3, 4, 4. Okay.
هذا فرض هذا
problem. This is a worn key, or the pins are worn. Because I'm also going to ask you, how old do you think this lock is? Is this a new lock, or do you think this has been in service for a while?
هل هذا مفتاح قديم ولا؟
Okay, now that's obviously a new lock.
فترة بسيطة ولا فترة طويلة؟
Okay, that,
I have to open it and check the key.
well, you just told me you didn't know. So you can't go backwards. So here's the problem. If you didn't hate me before, you will now. So here's the problem. I can pull that key out if that's a worn key and leave that in an open condition, and you can't tell the difference. So don't ever think, now you're correct in your first statement that the key is normally trapped in the lock. It doesn't have to be. So then the question is, let's say this lock is worn inside. So it's not as high tolerances, okay? In my career, in Toby's career, we've jiggled open a lot of locks, okay?
With keys?
With keys. I used to do that as a kid. I used to open everything, all the vending machines. I used to jiggle them open.
And actually, they sell jiggle keys.
Yeah,
it's
jiggle
a set
keys.
of 20 keys with different combinations, and you try to replicate get the tolerances of this lock.
And kids are really good at this. We were good child criminals. Okay, then we went into law enforcement. A lot of child criminals went into law enforcement. Okay? So, if you take a key, you can jiggle it and open other locks. Lots of times. And if the locks are cheap locks, like we're going to get later today, they're more susceptible to being jiggled open by keys that are not supposed to open.
Yeah.
So now what do you do? Because now I've technically picked that lock.
With no marks.
With no marks. And if I can pull the key out, what the hell do I know? It doesn't matter. I may not lock it back up. It doesn't matter. All I want to do is open it. Okay? There's no rule that says I got to turn it all the way to 12 o'clock or 3 o'clock to pull the key out. So you have to be really, really careful in the opinions you draw, just because the lock may be open.
First of all, you have to know the mechanism.
You have to know the mechanism. And you really need to look at the pins to see if they're worn. See, a normal pin, as you'll see in the pin kits, is rounded or angled.
Yeah, they have
يعني هو القصد الآن كلام كله هذا باختصار شديد أو باختصار الكلام اللي الجماعة يعرفون باختصار الكلام إن الآن بوريكم بعض الأشياء مفاتيح قوانين فتحت مفاتيح أخرى وما تركت آثار وفي أيضا مفاتيح عملت يعني أمور معينة مثل خلك على الجنب ولكنها مفتوحة طبيعية وفي ايضا امور ثانيه حيوريكم قوانين رخيصه حيجيبها اليوم او بكره وحتفتح مفاتيح اخرى ثانيه. فقضيه ان بدون ترك اي اثار، قضيه انك تحديد الاثار هذه وكيف فتحها لازم في النهايه لازم تعرف ايش ميكانيكيه القفول كلها على اساس تعرف تحدد كيف تحقق في الموضوع.
So this is what a normal pin will look like, either totally rounded or angled. Okay, it depends on the lock manufacturer, it depends on the design of the key and how the pins are designed to set at what we call the root of the key. Okay? So in a worn pin, this is going to be dull, or there's actually going to be a key track across the base of the pin. You can really see worn pins. You follow? So you need to look at a lot of parameters to make these kind of decisions. I can tell you that the likelihood that the lock was picked, if there are marks inside the lock, they can't get there any other way. They can't get there from a key.
So how could discriminate between the marks which is produced by the original key or the fake one, or copy key?
Really, really, really tough. Unless
because this is يعني شلون نميز بين
I know what your problem is.
But this is the first question we was asking the court.
I know.
Whether it's opened by original key or copy or duplicate.
I honestly, unless.
Well, that's one of the reasons that mechanical locks are going electromechanical locks. So they can have an ID.
An audit trail.
And now it's.
But the problem is these guys aren't dealing with
Okay. يقول لك
But that's actually a problem. It is a problem.
بعض كثير من المؤسسات من قبل ميكانيكي الى الكتروميكانيكال يختارون على اساس يشوفون التريسز او الاثار او عن طريق البرنت اوت او شو الاشياء اللي فتحت التريسز على اساس ان في مفتاح اخر استخدم
على حسب التوجيه.
ايه الكتروميكانيكال يعني ميكانيكي مع الكتروني.
We're going to show you some samples, but always has been a problem, and manufacturers work the problem, the same problem that you have.
Every microinterface still have the.
Oh no, everybody does. Okay.
Yeah.
The problem is, what's the difference between an original key? A duplicate key that was made on a key. Wait a minute. That was made on a key machine. A duplicate key that was filed by hand. What's the difference?
شو الفرق ما بين مفتاح أصلي مع المفتاح النسخة اللي مصنوعة من ماكينة عطر ماكينة أو من مفتاح صنع يدويا لنسخة؟
Now, as I think Toby mentioned yesterday, if it's a blank that's not the correct blank that a duplicate was made on, and it's forced into the lock, you may see scratch marks on the side of the keyway, for example.
Two-sided.
Yes, because the key isn't registering properly.
Okay. يقول لك إذا كان عمل نسخة من المادة الخام أو المفتاح الخام تم تقطيعه على كنسخة مفتاح خام، لكنه ما يتلائم مع المجرى مع المفتاح، فيترك آثار على جانبين المجرى لأنه مش راكب مع حدد.
I don't want to complicate this too much, but let's say that I have a safe.
Safe.
Okay? The safe has a key. I ordered 2 keys. The safe came with 2 keys from the factory. Okay? So those keys are original keys, right? It came from the factory, has the name of the factory, has the key code stamp and everything. 2 original keys. I call the manufacturer and say, I want 2 more keys. They're going to say, okay, who are you? I'm registered with them. Say, okay, my key code is 126. Okay, we'll send you 2 new keys. Send me 2 new keys, now I have 4.
Or original.
Original keys? It's not a copy?
No. Copy. Supposed to be original.
Okay, so that's the 3. What do you consider as an original key? The original that came with the lock? Or after that?
Well,
because then I can say, I only have 2 keys.
Okay. I have another issue. It can't be copy original key. It can't copy original key.
Yes.
Wow.
If you have a copy and use the key for 3, 4, 5 years, and you never use the original.
That's a big problem. Okay, well, we know that problem. We know where NASA's going, because now, if I copy the original key, but the original key is worn, unless it's a code cut key, the copy of the original is not going to be the original. It's going to be different. Yeah. A factory, normally all the factories in the world, everything's generated by code. That's why we talked to you guys about codes yesterday.
Yeah.
So theoretically, every key that comes out of a factory is a factory original key. Because the code cut.
My country is quite different. We don't deal with a code. You know, you have to bring with you the original key and duplicate it, you know, by the machine. And the duplicated key almost, you know, distorted. You know?
Yeah, but it's not going to be exactly the same.
Remain on the original key. We examine the original key for, you know, for the machine trace.
Then it depends on how
That's
good
the
the copy
difference. You're looking for who made that copy.
Or this original.
You're also looking
key
at,
copy. You know?
You're also looking at the cutting wheel.
Yes, in the first
on the key machine.
Yeah.
And are the number of teeth on the cutting wheel. If you guys will read my book, the forensic section on the disc, 24 chapters 24 to 28, I go into this. It depends on the number of teeth on the cutting wheel on the key machine. Because the number of teeth, you can look at it under a microscope and see the little cuts as the wheel goes, the cutting wheel goes around, okay? So you can sometimes say, okay, this key was made by this kind of a cutting wheel versus this kind of cutting wheel because it's a finer cutting wheel, okay? Because you can see the lines, okay? Now, what you're talking about, and there's another factor to bring in, if the key machine is really inaccurate, if it's a really good key machine, will the key machine replicate distortions on the original key? And you can look at an original key and usually tell whether that, well, you can usually tell whether it's a code cut or a hand cut key. So, I mean, we can look at factory keys and tell, okay, this was punched out, or this was cut by a machine. This original code cut machine. All right. So the problem becomes really complicated, and then, well, there's two issues. Is it blank factory original? And is it cut factory original, or what machine is it cut on? In your investigations, you want to know, is it an original key from the factory, or whether it was made on a key machine? Is that what you're primarily? Yeah. So what's your biggest problem to make the determination?
How I could discriminate or differentiate between the marks on the pen, whether originated from the original key or produced. This is produced by
I mean on the pins and the locks.
And how it could be, if I'm talking about the original key, the trace, how it could be.
Okay, but are you talking about did the original key open the lock, or was it a copy that opened the lock? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
That's really tough. Because how...
Unless you have a camera from
always we ask this question. Nobody asks how it's open.
If the key, and I've talked about this before, but you're not the first one to ask the question. If the key that opened the lock had a burr on it or some irregularity, it would mark the inside of the lock with pins, then I might be able to tell you that mark is irregular, okay? But that's really pushing it, because unless there's something on the side of the key that's irregular or not fitting properly. The likelihood, unless they're really soft pins, the likelihood of marking a pin, especially if they're so, is really almost not. Because you don't
Yeah. Tobias called me when I was in the lecture. I found the phone number for your package.
Great, okay. Okay, so how long is the break?
No, I have to call them back because break. 10 minutes.
Let's go smoke, guys.
Yeah, all you guys gotta go smoke. Quickly.
يا جماعة على فكرة لحظة شباب بالنسبة في استمارات تستملونها لكم إياها ها المليتون يكون باك أصلا تعطونها الوكيل سيف هنا تعطون الوكيل سيف
You can look at. You basically, if you stick a duplicate or an original key into a lock, you're not going to see the difference.
هذه طبعا من المواضيع الرئيسية. If you stuck an original
and a duplicate.
اوكي اذا انت خلاص يعني بعت على مفتاح نسخة استمع على طول او المفتاح الاصلي على طول يعني ما تتفرق اصلا شو المفتاح شغال معك سمع يمكن.
Now, there's a couple issues that you need to briefly be aware of. If the duplicate key is cut on a machine or by hand and it's not exactly accurate.
How many of you have made a copy and it didn't work?
Didn't work?
It did not work.
It did not work.
يعني زين المفاتيح تصنع نسخ يدويا او بالاله ليست دقيقه مثل المفتاح المصنع اللي جاي من المصنع. ولكن السؤال توبي يسأل كم واحد فيكم سوى نسخة وما اشتغل؟
And how many of you have made a key that you put it and it turns like heart?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Why is that?
ليش؟
Do you know why?
Finishing. The finishing not accurate.
The cutting, you know.
So you know what happened inside the lock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened?
You will find there is some, scratch.
No, you'll find this.
Shear line, maybe the shear line.
There you go. That's exactly right. So, if you have a key that's especially a hand-cut key that's cut too high. Yeah. Okay, too high. So the pins are slightly protruding above shear line. Then when you turn that key, it's going to take force because it's not a perfect clearance.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. إذا فرضنا إن القط صار يدوي والقط صار شوي عالي عن المفتاح الطبيعي الشير لاين اللي هو الخط الفاصل ما بين السلندر يتحرك وما بين جسم القفل. إذا الخط هذا غير يعني الشير لاين غير مستوي لأن في بعض بروز للبساط الأعلى فحيكون الحركة شوي قاسية أو شديدة.
So what's going to happen is when you stick the key in, it's going to be really hard to turn. The pins, the bottom pins, are going to score around the shell as you try to turn that plug.
والبن حيسوي يسحب على طالع من السلندر على جسم القفل.
Now, I can tell you that's an absolute indication it's not a factory original key.
طبعا هذا غير طبعا هذا بشكل واضح مو مصنعية.
The factories will code cut keys to the right depth.
شفرة المصنع اللي حاط الكود اللي عليه اوتوماتيكيا يقطع بنفس المستويات وبنفس المفتاح الأصلي.
Factories don't make locks that maybe in China. Factories don't make locks that don't work.
مصانع ما تصنع مفاتيح ما تشتغل.
Okay.
No, Chinese sometimes do.
Yeah, well, that's why I said. But really, honestly, not. I mean, locks are easy to make. Okay, even crappy locks with poor tolerance, okay?
That was the first case. The key was hard to turn.
Yeah, now
So
there's
it
a
makes-
flip side of that case.
The key is cutting too high, so the top of the pin is gonna score that portion of the lock. Now, how many of you are make a key and then it's like make it click, clack, or you have to move it a little bit? Happens also.
حد منكم مثلا الساوند بتاعته ايش ما يشتغل بشكل مستعجل عدل الا ما تهز شوي يمين يسار كذا يفتح.
So it's not a smooth turn. Okay. What happened is the opposite. The pin is too low,
يعني معناه
and the top pin is blocking portion of the plug.
معنى
So
هذا
that's what you feel.
هذا نازل مو مرتفع يكون قطع نازل زياده فالبن اللي في جسم القفل داخل في الاسطوانه.
Tooth mark.
Then you're creating also a tool mark by doing that on each board.
هني هذا ايضا تول مارك على السلندر الفوقي على اساس عامل لك ايش؟ هني اثر ثاني ان المفتاح المستخدم كوبي مو بعد مساطن على جسم السلندر بحد ذاته. الحين شوف الاثار دور اثار بس على البستم دور اثار على اماكن ثانيه على السلندر الدائر حوله جسم السلاح. اذا في اثار قويه معناه في مفتاح كوبي مسواي الليفل ماله القطع اقل او القطع ماله اقل فمسوي لي اثار من جهتين.
Okay, because
على
there's
جسم
no
الداخل او من جسم على جسم السلندر.
there's no other way that you can make those marks either on top or on the bottom if it's not a wrong key.
The problem, as I discovered, that some Chinese keep giving this choice for the original, and the Chinese key is widely spread in my country.
It's not
So this is
a tool of thought.
confusion.
It's not always a rule.
الحين الاثار شوف يعني فحوا الكلام حد او شيء خلينا نتكلم اصحاب المختبرات يحضرون قسم التحقيق اصحاب المعامل الالات حد منكم فحص اثر الاله على السلندر بحد ذاته من الداخل ولا بس تفحصون مساتن؟
تقريبا بالذات
بالذات بس بالذات ما فحصتوا وسمونه هناك
ما نركز عليه.
ما تركز شوف هنا نقطه ثانيه.
Now be careful also. That doesn't mean
كان هذا في عندك انت ايش؟ هذا السلندر اوكي؟ الشير لاين او هذا المستقبل هذا اوكي؟ هذا السيستم هني اوكي؟ هذا السيستم المفروض يفتح عليه اوكي؟ هذا لو كان هذا مقطوع نازل هذا بينزل هنا تحت هذا بيهني ينزل شوي هني بينزل لما تلف على المفتاح يسوي لي اثر مارك this one اوكي في حال ان هذا اعلى قطعه ماله الكوبي هذا بيرتفع بيكون هني اوكي فانت مسوي لك اثر على داخل جسم السلاح من جسم القفل من الداخل مسوي لك اثر ثاني عندك اثرين اما اثر القطع اما نازل اما طيح الكوبي احتمال فكل الحالتين يسوي لك اثر اما على السلندر حد ذاته من فوق اما اثر على جسم القفل من اعلى.
وحتى بعد اعتقد ان المفتاح نفسه سن المفتاح اذا كان يعني داخل اكبر راح كذلك راح يعطي اثر.
هي نعم.
السن يعني
السن
والسن يعني من الجهتين.
الحواف هني. اوكي؟
بس عفوا بالنسبه لهذا الاثر ايش الفائده منه؟ يدل على ايش؟
يدل ان في حصل المفتاح مش المفتاح الاصلي المستخدم.
لو حدث الاثر هذا دليل.
هي هذا القصد كان.
Okay, so, and don't forget, you can have one of these marks because one of 5 or 6 cut, probably most of your locks are 5-pin locks, not 6.
5 to 6.
5, yeah.
5 to 6. اوكي معظم السلندرات موجوده في بساط عدد بساط بتكون ما بين 5 ل 6 معظم يعني عموما الاطفال هذه فتحصل هالاثر ما على بستم واحد بستنين.
So you could have a mark, a scoring or a mark in the bore in one or more bores depending on how the key was cut.
اوكي انت ممكن تحصل الاثر على على السلندر او على البورد اللي هو جسم القفل على بستم او بستنين يعتمد على كيف القفل بينكت او قطع القفل نفسه.
And the reason for that is you can have either the machine cutting the key, all the cuts too high or too low, or you can have the technician cutting the key, just cutting the first being good, and the other one you just pass it and the one get a little bit higher. So that's why you can have either all of them or some of them, depending on the calibration of the machine. The spacing also can make tricks on those marks, but it's for the machine.
Yeah, and it also depends whether, whether it's a code cutting machine or just a duplicating machine with a stylus that's tracing the original key to the copy key.
Now again, these don't tell you which key was used to open the lock. What it can tell you is exactly, you have a case when they say, no, we only have 2 keys. My key and my wife's key, and we were wrong.
اوكي. هالحالات يقول لك طبعا تعتمد الاثار على وجود اثر او اثرين، يعتمد على نوع الآلة اللي استخدمت في قطع هذا المفتاح من الاصل الى القالب. كيفية القطع، هل القطع كان سليم او في اثر قطع كان على السريع، او فيعطيك اثر على بستن او بستن او كلهم يعطيك الاثار. هذا شيء. الشيء الثاني هذا ما يعطيك مؤشر انه فتح بمفتاح، يعني يسمونه ما يعطيك مؤشر الا في حالات مثلا انا يقول انا عندي مثلا مفتاحين، واحد عندي من زوجتي واحنا سرقنا
So that's only an indication that maybe a duplicate key was made for that lock.
وهذا يعطيك مؤشر ان هناك مفتاح اخر مصطنع استخدم في هذا الفتح.
So, okay, so there's another problem. Is there, first of all, I'd ask the homeowner or the business owner, how many keys did you have made for this lock? Did you guys have duplicates, or you got 2 keys, 3 keys when you bought the locks, that's it?
اوكي. هني عندي مشكلة أخرى. يقول أنا الآن لما لأي قضية أسأل كم نسخة عندك مفتاح؟ هل عندك أنت نسخة أو نسختين أو عملت مجموعة نسخ أو أصلاً أنت جيت مع القفل 3 مفاتيح أصلية؟
So, then the question is, are there numbers stamped on the keys? Again, if you'll look in the forensic chapters, there's lots and lots of investigative questions. We went through very detailed lists of, okay, here's the questions you ought to ask.
يقول أو في المفاتيح مرقمة إلى مرقمة، طبعا وضع غير النمر الترقيم ممكن تجيب أرقام أخرى نفس المفتاح بنفس الكت، ولكن يقول لك إحنا في الكتاب اللي عطناكم إياه في مجموعة كثيرة من الأسئلة في قضية تحقيق القفل القوانين، وهذه this question it is by your experience.
Yeah, it's mine and a lot of other people.
اوكي. هاي تجارب كثيره، اسئله كثيره في مجال التحقيق في القفول، يعني ممكن تسالها في قضيه القوانين وشو تفيدك في قضيه تحقيق هذه الاسئله هاي.
I tried to develop a master list of questions. If you don't know what questions to ask to start with, you don't have your hand around the case to figure out, okay, what could have happened.
اوكي. يقول أنا حطيت مجموعة أسئلة رئيسية في القضية هذه، قضية المفاتيح قضية رئيسية المفروض تكون موجودة. إذا أنت ما تعرف شو الأسئلة اللي قاعد تسألها ما تقدر إيش تتم القضية.
So then the question is, are there any numbers on the keys that came from the factory?
كم عدد المفاتيح اللي يكمل مع المصنع؟
Okay.
في there's a key come with 6 keys.
Okay, that's fine.
And the 3 keys come, and there's 5 keys.
Yeah, everybody's different.
Yes.
Okay, but are there factory codes on the keys?
Okay. السؤال هل يوجد رقم الكود على المفاتيح؟ هذا كنت أنت تعرفونه.
How difficult are the keys to look at or to take the code number from the key and go to a lock shop and make more of them?
يقول شو الصعوبة إن تاخذ رقم الكود من المفتاح وتصير عند ورش المفاتيح من الرقم هذا يسووا لك نسخ منها ما يحتاج ها؟ ما في صعوبة.
Well, sometimes
على فكرة البارحة بالضبط يا جماعة اسمعوني هاي يعجبكم الرمز هاي البارحة صرت مع جماعة أتلانتا منطقة أتلانتا وقاعد أتمشى المساء بالليل الأخ كان طالع فترينات شاف الأرقام على الكوالين كلها قال لي أنا ممكن أقرأ مفاتيحهم.
I work in...
أوكي يقول يعني ستوبد غباء الارقام حاط لي على يقول اعطيك مفاتيح تفتحها شنو ف
والفترينات ايش فيها؟
ايش؟
الفترينات هذه ايش فيها؟
شنو فيها؟ ارقام كود ارقام اما بالارقام ونسب على اللوك
شنو فيها؟
بلى صورناهم باحث صورناهم ارقام.
I work in your house and I use your key. I'm your maid, I'm your gardener, whatever. A, is there any numbers on the key that I can take to a locksmith or somebody that knows what they're doing or a high school kid that knows what they're doing and I can make a key from that code number? That's number 1. 2, can I take a picture of that key and make one? Because if I can take a code number off that key, that opens up a whole new line of inquiry. I want to see the original keys from the homeowner, if there was a burglary, to see if there's numbers on those keys.
هو أول شيء يقول إذا في قضية أول شيء لازم إيش تشوف مفتاح صاحب المالك هل يسمونه يوجد رقم مسلسل على مفتاحه ولا لا الكود.
Because I know that the house we went to last night has got $100,000 worth of jewelry in the safe. Okay?
Okay.
So, and I know somebody that works there.
Okay.
And I'm a burglar.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you 100 dirham.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, just tell me when you see the homeowner's key, when you park their car.
Okay.
This is a big problem in America with car valets.
Okay.
I want the numbers off the keys.
Okay. يقول طبعا أنا من أشياء بسيطة إن مثلا بيت كبير في مثلا مجوهرات بقيمة كبيرة إن أنا أعطي مبلغ 100 درهم حق اللي شغال في البيت سواء كان من خدم أو كذا أقول له بس هات لي رقم المفتاح the key number. وهذه مشكلة نعانيها في أمريكا في قضية اللي هو صف السيارات موظف صف السيارات إن أرقام المفاتيح ياخذها بكل سهولة يعطيها لناس معينين. بأرقام سيارات هذا ممكن يصنع سيارات أخرى.
We've worked investigations in the United States involving car park valets.
يقول اشتغلنا قضية سرقة السيارات متورط فيها اللي هو يسمونه موظف صف السيارات.
Because the idiots have all their keys on the key ring for their cars.
يقول لأن الأغبياء حاطين مفاتيحهم كلهم مع مفتاح السيارة. سواء مفتاح المكتب مفتاح البيت مع كذا كلهم هذا.
Nobody thinks about it. We go to the Atlantis hotel last night. You give me your keys.
Yes.
You never think about it.
You
got your car key, your house key, your office key, your safety deposit box key.
يقول لك أنت لما تشوف صف السيارات تعطي المفتاح في بدالية في مفتاح المكتب، مفتاح البيت، مفتاح الخزنه، مفتاح صندوق الامانات، وكله في ارقام، كله في ارقام كودز.
That's right.
بس الارقام يصورهم خلاص.
Well, it's also important where you go to. Let's get it, and probably this happened also to one of you guys. You go and make a copy, it doesn't work. What do? You go back and say to the guy, hey, the key that you cut didn't work. Oh, we cut another one.
Just like my story when I was a kid.
I cut another one, right? What did they do with the old key that it was supposed to not working? They have a law that they have to break it or something?
No, of course not.
What they do, they throw it.
And
okay, in the States, you're entitled to all those keys, cut it wrong or not, because that key, I can take that key and go to your house and open it.
Now the other.
So that's another source. Hey, where do you cut this key? You know?
From the code.
Huh?
From the code.
From the cut or just take that key, that same key, and go and open it. The client give it to you. You say it doesn't work. Right, I'll cut you another key, but you already have the code. Where those keys goes? If you don't have a policy of as I said, in the States, if somebody cuts a key for you and it doesn't work, I have to give you the key that doesn't work. You're entitled to that key.
So on any major theft, I want to know if nobody can figure out how they got in.
Yep.
And they can't figure out how they got the key to your safe. If it's not a combination lock.
Okay. يقول لازم كمحقق تفكر كيف وصلوا مفاتيح بيتك وكيف وصلوا مفاتيح خزنتك وكيف بدهم يفتحون الخزنه وشو الطرق، لان في عده طرق اصلا. مختصر الكلام ان المفاتيح هذا رقم تشفيرها ممكن هذا في طبعا هم عندهم في امريكا اليه في قضيه المفاتيح مشفره انه ما نقدر تعطى لاحد ما تذكر كذا كذا، احنا ما عندنا الاليه اصلا اطلاقا. ولكن هل بامكان واحد ينسخ مفتاح عن طريق الشفره؟ اي ممكن. انا سويته نفسي. صرت محل وعملت مفتاح برقم شفرات. موجود في الامارات، موجود في الامارات، ما ادري الاخوه الثانيين هل موجود هالشيء ولا موجود ما ادري. فكنا قضيه اني انا افتح مفتاح برقم الشفره موجوده هاي. تاخذ الرقم وخلص السيارات. ايه وايضا تحصل مفاتيح البيوت فيها ايضا رقم الشفرات. فهذا هاي كواليتي لوكس، ما اتكلم عن جانك لوكس.
So NASA is working an investigation right now where there's a lot of jewelry taken out of the safe.
Yes.
Okay. And the owners say there's 2 keys to the safe?
2 keys safe.
And they only had them, nobody else had those keys?
No.
Nobody else has got access?
No.
And they carry those keys with them?
Yes.
Okay, they never leave them out of their sight?
That they would see.
They're on their key ring, so they know they always got them?
Yes.
Tell me what kind of car you drive. Oh, I drive a Mercedes or a BMW.
Okay.
The place we were at last night, that like there's 3 Porsches in the next driveway. Very, very wealthy area.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me where you parked your car. And when you parked your car, did you give your attendant the keys?
Yes.
Because now you gave your attendant the key to your safe and the key to your house. And your registration is in your car. So now they got your address. We've worked cases in America like this, where the parking attendants, everybody has to carry their vehicle registration in their glove compartment or on their visor. Okay? So we know, we don't even need to list your license plate, because we have all these privacy laws now. We have your registration. So we've got your address.
Okay.
So now we got keys to your house, and if you don't have an alarm system in your house, then we can walk in, you got the keys, we're done.
Okay. يقول الآن طبعا قضية مفاتيح المرقمة. أنا قد كنت خبر عن قضية سرقة مجوهرات من منزل مراد الداعي انها مفاتيح معاها خدمة سليمة وعايش معاه زوجها وولدها 15 سنة وخادمة. طبعا في سرقة مجوهرات من الخزنة جبل علي. فهو يقول طبعا المنطقة يعني شكلها يعني أصحاب أغنياء، يعني بإمكان يعني هذا في أمريكا عندنا إن بكل بساطة لما يشتغلون مثلا عند أي مكان يوقفون سيارة وصف سيارات بكل بساطة ياخذون الأرقام وما يحتاجون يعرفون عنوان الشخص أو يسمعون يعرفون عنوان الشخص من قضية الريجستر تلقاه وين بيته. وإذا كان ما عنده ألارم سيستم في البيت بإمكانه طبعا يسوي مفاتيح عن طريق الكود ودخلوا يسمونه فتحوا البيبان عادي ودخلوا فتحوا اللي يبونه وروحوا ومشوا.
So I'm trying to develop as an investigator. When I get called in to work an investigation by an agency or by a private client, my job is obviously the same as yours, to try to isolate information. So if I got somebody that says nobody had this key.
أنا مثلكم محقق مثلا قضايا خاصة وقضايا يسمونها شرطية. أحاول استخلص المعلومات كيف تم الحصول على هذا المفتاح.
Now, then I want to start looking at the other side of this, and I want to know how difficult is this lock to pick? Is this a cheap lock or is this a good lock?
أول شيء أشوف القفل، هل هو القفل اللي ممكن بإمكانه فتحه بطرق فنية بسيطة أو إنه هو رخيص من نوع ضعيف أو إنه من قفل التأمينات القوية جدا.
And is it possible, well, first of all, if they bought the lock from a locksmith or the safe from a locksmith, I want to know about that locksmith. Because let me tell you another issue. If it's a big locksmith and they keep records.
أنا أول شيء أتابع هذا القفل وين شروه، لأن إذا كان محل قفال كبير ومعروف ومشهور يحتفظون هما بالسجلات.
We've had a lot of cases in the United States where the locksmiths that keep records of all their clients and all the key codes and all the combinations to their safes
get hacked.
They get broken into, and now everybody that they serve is at risk.
Okay. عندنا مثلا يقول عندنا احنا محلات كبيرة كفار في أمريكا عندهم يسمونه جميع البيوت والمنازل والمؤسسات عندهم يسمونه الكود المفاتيح مالهم كلها موجودة عندهم في معلومات لهم. هذول المحلات صار بروحهم هاك أو قدروا يقتحمونها وقدروا يأخذون المعلومات شفرات مالها كلها، فبالتالي جميع البيوت اللي عاملة أو المؤسسات اللي عاملة هذا كان يكون مجال خطر للسرقة.
So if I pay somebody at the lock shop, or I just break into the lock shop because they don't have an alarm system,
okay,
and I get their code list, I got addresses, I got key codes, I got blanks, I got everything.
إذا قدرت أنا أدخل محل مفاتيح وعنده جميع الريكورد للزبائن اللي حاملين المفاتيح وجميع الشفرات، أقدر آخذ هالشفرات الكودز الأرقام الكودز كلها وآخذ البلانكس ومقرر الكود أقدر أسوي مفاتيح البيوت اللي أحتاج أسرقها وعناوينهم أيضا موجودة في الليستة.
On cheap locks also, we maybe find that more, let's say a safe, you have more than one safe with the same key.
أيضا من الأشياء اللي يجدوها إن خزنة يعني تفتح مفتاح واحد لعدة خزن موجود في بيت واحد.
Because the manufacturer just think, okay, this key for this customer is going that way, and this key for this customer goes that way, but the keys are the same.
أوكي لا أنا فهمت غلط. يقول بعض الأحيان يتفاجأ إن المفتاح يعني نفس المفتاح اللي فتح الخزنة هذا يفتح الخزنة بمكان ثاني. ليش؟ لأن المصنع حاط في باله إن هالخزنة لما أعطيناه مفتاح فهذا مكان ثاني فما راح اسمه.
The only thing that I have to do is buy a safe from the same company or the same place, and now I have a key for two different safes.
أنا كل اللي أقدر أسويه أشتري الخزنة من عنده ومفتاح الخزنة هذا أفتح مكانين.
That happens also with key locks, regular cylinders. Made from China. Grab 20 locks and see if they really get different locks or they repeat keys.
هذا صارت الخزن الصينية في أمريكا يعني عندهم هناك في قضايا تفتح كذا الخزن.
Another issue. key-to-like locks at commercial, at stores.
That's basically.
Again?
Okay, key-alike locks.
That's what.
Did you say that? Okay, because I was looking at something else. Okay, let me tell you another thing. A few years ago, I worked a murder investigation in my state when I was working for the government.
عدة سنوات أنا اشتغلت بقضية قتل لما كنت أشتغل مع الحكومة في الولاية.
We had a big drug dealer, big drug dealer, who was killed, who engineered, he had one of our drug informants, undercover agents, killed.
Okay, is the undercover has been killed?
Yeah.
Okay, في قضية مخدرات، واحد إنتاج مخدرات كبير وعندهم يعني واحد متخفي شرطي في يشتغل وياه مقتول.
This guy, Jimmy Clark, he was the head of a big motorcycle outlaw gang. Motorcycle outlaws.
هو طبعا مثل المدرجات he's خارج عن القانون اللي هو يسمونه البايكر الموتوسيكلات.
Okay, so he has this girl killed and then he's killed.
عنده صديقة ماتت بعدين هو قتل.
So we find him buried in a lime pit in his backyard.
حصل معقول مدفون في حديقته.
Couldn't have happened to a better guy. Okay, so my boss, the Attorney General, goes to the dead guy's house.
رئيس صار منزل بيت مقتول.
All right? And he calls me, I'm at the office, and he says, there's a safe, a wall safe above the fireplace that we need to open.
قال هناك خزنة موجودة في بيته فوق مدخل التدفئة.
What's the combination?
شو هو يسمونه هذا مال الأرقام.
This is a combination lock.
أو القفل الرقمي. القفل الرقمي.
And my boss, who was the Attorney General of our state, was very impatient and had no idea about locks.
وطبعا هو غير صبور وما عنده فكرة عن الفوت.
So they call me like they call Nasser. Tell me when it was opened and who opened it and how it was opened at what time. and was the guy wearing a wedding ring and how was he dressed? Okay.
عندك عليه ونقدر يقول نفس الشيء نفس الأسئلة اللي حصلوا هناك.
And this is the guy that called Nasser to ask the question.
أنا أقول أنا هناك مثلا ناصر تعال شوف متى فتح من الساعة كم فتح ومتى فتح متى أجيبه كلها مرة واحدة.
How many keys did not resound? That means in Egypt, one of the factories give 45,000 keys.
Oh,
different.
Oh, okay.
How many keys in the
Depending
big?
on the lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, can we hold that question for a minute?
Huh?
Can we wait on that question for 1 minute? Well, let us talk about
okay.
Because Toby, remind me to talk about an after case I work about tracing back motor vehicles on number of keys.
Okay, this is because we thought that some
Toby's just reminding. Okay. So, because I want to talk about
لشركات لأماكن بعض الخزن المتشابهة فده اللقص بقى بتاعتهم how many for
Okay, but we'll talk about that in just a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem.
So, my boss calls me on this murder investigation and says, what's the combination of the safe? And I said, well, how the hell would I know?
قال كم رقم شو الرقم؟ قال شو عرفني؟
Okay, so he says, well, you're the genius, so you tell me how to open it. I'm sitting 300 miles away at the office. So I say, okay, why don't you try the combination? This is a Sargent and Greenleaf combination lock, which is a world famous combination lock, used everywhere from America. I say, try the combination 25, 50, 25. And 50, 25, 50.
قال هناك طبعا في رقم متداول جدا في امريكا في المصانع اللي هو 22 25 1 25 او 50 1 50.
Okay.
قال جرب هذول الارقام.
Who knows what those numbers are?
من يعرف الارقام؟ من اللي يعرف الارقام؟
Do you guys combination locks? Those are called factory default combination.
هذا الارقام افتراضيه مصنعيه.
Okay? Every real combination lock is sold to the locksmiths with default combinations that are programmed at the factory.
معظم الخزن توزع على المحلات بأرقام ثابتة افتراضية.
Okay, now, every real locksmith knows to change the default combination when you install the lock.
وكل محل لما يبيع على الخزنة على الزبون لازم يغير له الرقم على حسب ما يطلب الزبون.
So how did I solve the murder case?
كيف أنا حليت قضية القتل؟
Because when I called my boss and told him, try these combinations, I didn't know what the combination was, but this was a possibility.
يعني يقول أنا لما أعطيت هذا الرقم أنا ما أخذ كم الرقم ما أعرف ولكن هذا افتراض احتمالي أنا قلت لأن المصنع أنا ما المصنع بهذه الأرقام الرئيسية.
He calls me back 5 minutes later and he says, you're a genius, the safe opened. And I said, the first part of that, I know I'm a genius. And he says, well, how did you know? And I said, I didn't, but let me tell you what this tells you. This tells you that either the locksmith is an idiot that put this safe in, or somebody took the safe out of the fireplace, put a new safe in the fireplace that they went and bought from a locksmith, and they didn't reprogram the combination, which means they weren't the locksmith.
Okay. قال هذا له احتمالين انه يكون راعي محل كفور حمار او غبي ما غير الرقم. الاحتمال الثاني ان هالخزنه مو هي نفس الخزنه المفروض تفتحها، خزنه شلوها وشروا خزنه مباشره من لوك سميث من محل الكفور وحطوا خزنه بدالها بدون ما يغيرون بكملتهم خذوا الخزنه ليش؟ الثانيه. هاي احتمالين.
We went back and we checked every store within a 25-mile radius who sold these wall safes.
وصرنا حققنا مباشرة مشينا على مدى 25 ميل حقق أي واحد باع خزنة الفترة هذه.
The guy, one of the killers, used a credit card.
أحد القتل استعمل.
We went back, identified him. We ultimately got a confession that they had killed this drug dealer, and they lived in his house for 3 weeks. Took the $100,000 out of the safe, and that's how we solved the case.
احنا بهالطريقه حلينا القضيه. يقول عرفنا بالبطاقه الائتمان الشخص اللي شرى خزنه وحدث في نفس قضيه المتهم وحط الخزنه مكان الخزنه الاوليه وسرق $100,000 في الخزنه من تاجر المخدرات وكانوا بايتين عنده هم 3 weeks.
Yeah, they lived in the house for 3 weeks.
عاشوا في بيته 3 أسابيع.
And so this is a perfect example of taking information that you would have no idea.
وهذا مثال بسيط على موضوع ممكن معلومات عندك معلومات عن الخزنه وعن هالامور في الكفور ادت الى ايش؟ تبرر القضيه بالكامل.
And you work your way backwards because there's no locksmith. You agree?
Yeah.
There's no locksmith that's leaving the default combination on the safe.
هني تصل الى قناعه انه ما في تاجر كفور يعطيك خزنه برقم افتراضي. لازم نغير لك اياها.
We'll get you your question in just a minute.
Now, don't think that it doesn't happen that people leave the factory combination. That is quite often.
But that's if you buy the safe.
Yeah.
But not a locksmith.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to that is.
Yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to go to this with sidebar codes.
Okay. بالنسبة لنا يقول لك لا تعتقد إن الخزنة أو الخزنة بيعطيك صاحب محل الخزن أو يبيع لك إياه برقم افتراضي لازم يغير لك إياه. هذا
Actually, there is a tool that is called a dialer. It dials combinations.
It's a robot.
It's a robot.
It's a computerized robot.
To open that safe.
to dial different combinations.
We've got a video if any of you want to see it.
It's a robot. Well,
it's a little auto dialer.
Auto dialer.
auto dialer اللي هو في آلة يسمونها اللي هي auto dialer اللي هي غير الأرقام آليا يسمونها تفتح الخزنة تثبت على الأرقام وهي تتحرك الأرقام لين يعطيك الرقم الصحيح.
It's a precise stepper motor. It's a very precise stepper motor.
Yeah, it dials different combinations.
It dials every permutation with the tolerances of the same.
And how this machine knows this is
because you tell the machine
okay
what kind of combination lock it is. Okay.
But you don't know.
Oh yeah, you can tell. A lot of them you can tell.
This is for high security safes. So it's a real
It's a real combination lock.
It's not a cheap.
Okay, it's not a cheap lock.
No.
And we know, for example, the S&G, Sargent and Greeley 6730, which is probably the most common, popular combination lock in the world. It's a 3 combination lock, black dial, S&G, right in the center of the dial. They're used everywhere. Okay? We know that that's a group, what's called a group 2 combination lock. So it's medium security. It's not government security. We know that there's a plus or minus 1.25 tolerance between numbers. So you can dial, if your number is 5, 10, 15 for the combination, 6 1/4 and 4.75 will work for, or 3.75 will work for the 5. There's a top plus or minus 1 1/4 tolerance. So the little robot dialer is programmed for all those tolerance steps. So it doesn't need to go through 100,000 or 1,000,000 permutations.
Okay.
Okay. So this is a 100 division dial. So the number of combinations is 100 times 100 times 100. Theoretical, 1,000,000 combinations.
Yes.
But the reality is it's about 40,000 combinations. So you put a dialer on it, and in a half hour it's open.
Yeah. But guess what's the first combination that the dialer is going to try?
Yeah, 25, 50.
It's going to try the factory combination. So you can spend all the time putting the, you have to set it in the door, get the robot in that position, then tell the machine what safe it is.
It's a little computer.
And the
Is
first
the machine used for theft or for
no,
safety?
it's for opening. Opening safe. You have time, just put the dial, it can take 2 days to find the combination. You just want to open it without drilling the safe, without damaging the safe.
Yeah, you leave it on and go, you come back to say so.
اوكي هذا العموم في ارقام 3 ارقام غير يمين يسار يمين هذا لكن انت عندك ارقام افتراضيه الاحتماليه هو ايش الجهاز يسوي يعطيك احتماليات الاحتماليات اسمها احتماليات يقول لك 100 في 100 يعني كم احتمال مليون بس هذا الافتراضي بس الواقع 45000 افتراض يقول 45000 افتراض هذا الواقع فايش يسوي بيحط لك اياه ثبت لك اياه يبدا اول شيء بالرقم الافتراضي مصنعي وبعد ذلك يبدا ايش احتمال ثاني خلال نص ساعه بالسريع ويتحرك خلال نص ساعه يكون في الحبر الخزنه.
There's a million.
لا تسموه تفتحه تسوي ثقب في باب الخزنه لا شيء يعني ما في داعي شيء.
There's a million theoretical combinations, but the real number is about 40,000.
هناك يقول لك طبعا احتمالي مليون رقم بس اللي يسمونه الصحيح الاحتمالي موجود بالخزن 45000 رقم.
Now, the equivalent in locks, especially in car locks, do you guys know what tryout keys are? Have you ever heard that term? Tryout keys.
Maybe not in English. Let me try out.
Okay. You know when you can walk up to another car in a parking lot that's not yours, stick the key in, and it opens the door, and then you get in and somebody starts screaming, "You're stealing my car."
Okay.
Okay. In America, when we used to have General Motors, 50 years ago when I was a kid, we used to have 64 keys it would open all the General Motors cars, and this gets to your question, okay? I'm working my way to it. 64 keys that would open all the General Motors cars in the country.
يقول لك يقول في مفاتيح مشتركة تفتح سيارات. يقول لما كان 50 سنة يقول كان عندنا 64 مفتاح 64 مفتاح يفتح جميع سيارات جنرال موتورز.
Okay, General Motors, when I was in high school, I figured out how to make the 64 keys.
وأنا لما كنت في الثانوية أنا تمكنت أعمل 64 مفتاح.
Okay, how do I get millions of cars that I can open with 64 keys?
كيف عرفت إن أقدر أفتح من أكثر من مليون سيارة ب 64 مفتاح؟
How do I do it? Because this is his question. How do I make 64 keys? Let me tell you about the General Motors lock. They were they're called sidebar locks, but they're little wafers that move up and down. There was 4 cuts, 4 depths, 6 wafers.
يقول لك فيها عبارة عن 4 قطع 4 أعماق depth.
You're too smart. We're throwing you out.
4 قطع.
Okay, so we have 6 wafers and 4 depth increments. Okay? So, how do we make 64 keys to make, what's the total number of permutations?
4 by 4 by 4.
It's
4 by 4.
4 to the 6.
46, 4 by 4 by 4.
4, 4, 4, 4, 4,
4 by 4.
No, it's not 4 by
6
4.
4 by 3, 4 by 4 by 3 by 2.
It's 4 to the 6.
Huh?
4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times
6.
4.
No, it will be more than 4.
4 by 4 by 4.
No, 4 by 4.
By 4.
16. 16.
2,
4 power 4 by 4. 4 by 4 by 4.
Okay, so it's 4,096 total combinations.
Okay, يعني
It's 4 to the 6.
عبارة عن 4096 عملية داخلها. Okay. So هاي الجزئيات لنا 64.
How do we know how many different combinations there are for a specific lock?
كيف عرفنا
right?
كيف عرفنا ان هذه ال 64 هم اللي بس اللي بتعطيها؟
So if we have a pin tumbler lock and it has 10 depth increments and 5 pins.
If you're going too high, I will say less than.
Well, let's just take Schley.
Yeah, but I don't.
Okay.
I don't even think that a Chinese lock gets.
All right,
to-
let's say 5 depth. Okay, we have 5 different heights for the key. And we have 5 pin numbers.
3,125.
How many different theoretical combinations are there for that lock? It's 5 to the 5th. 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5.
إذا حسبنا احتمالية
Each dip 5 times. Yeah, it's 5 to the 5th. 5 to the 5th power. Okay? So that's how we compute the maximum number of theoretical, it's called differs. It's the English term.
نظريا يقول الخصوم حققت 5000 بس احنا كيف عرفنا ان هذا العدد محدد؟
Okay, so we could have 5 million, how many cars in America? Let's just say car lots. Let's say we had 10 million cars.
Okay.
Those 10 million cars across the country are General Motors cars.
Okay.
Are still only going to have one of 4,096 combinations. So in the car lock that I gave you the example of General Motors, there's only a total universe of 4,096 different keys.
Okay.
So we're going to have 10 million cars divided by 4,096. How many times is 4,000 going to 10 million?
Okay. يقول احنا عندنا مثلا 10 ملايين سيارة. إذا حصلنا احتمالية 64 مع 10 ملايين كم سيارة في المدينة؟
So 2,500 different, 2,500 cars in America will all have the same code, theoretically.
نظريا
2,500 into
250,000
4,000.
سيارة نظريا يكون عندنا مفاتيح سيارة. Okay?
So that's the likelihood that my key will open your key in the parking lot. 2,500.
هذه اللي اقدر افتح فيها يفترض اني افتح مفتاح اللي عندي افتح سيارتك اللي عندك.
So
They cannot create more than that.
they can't create more than that.
وما يقدروا يصنعوا اكثر من كذي.
So I had an investigation that I was called on by one of the crime labs in the United States because I'm a member of AFTI. The guys in the lab called me and says, we've got car thefts.
يقول اتصل فيني احد محامي مختبر جنائي في امريكا على قضيه على سرقه سيارات.
And we've got a key that we need to trace back to the owner.
عندنا مفتاح نبغى نقتضي اثار صاحب السياره.
And here's the code for this key.
وهذا رقم الكود المفتاح.
How do you solve that problem?
Yeah, that's a really good
No, that's a question for them.
Yeah, how do you solve the problem?
كيف حل المشكله؟
Can I figure out who, and here's the problem, they found the stolen car in a junkyard with a different door lock. The door lock had been changed.
حصلنا السياره في جانكيارد اللي هو مهملات او مهملات وقاعد انقفل متغير القفل السياره.
So they wanted to try to trace the door lock or the ignition lock back to the original owner.
يبغون يستخدمون اثر من الكالون سياره الى صاحب السياره مع ان الكالون متغير قبل السياره.
So that's a real problem. Now I can take the direct code from the key and I may come back with 5,000 different indirect lock codes. Because don't forget they're repeated in this universe. There's only so many codes.
أنا أخذت الكود. How many?
Let's say there's 5,000.
بالكود طلعت 8,000 مثلا هذا رقم متكرر. ليه؟ لأن الرقم متكرر لأن السيارة صنع كثير كمية كبيرة، فالرقم متكرر 5,000 مرة المفتاح، فالكود متكرر 5,000 مرة.
So I cannot take the key code for cars
أنا ما أقدر آخذ رقم كل السيارة
and go back to an owner unless I have one more piece of information.
وما أقدر أوصل لصاحب السيارة إلا بعد معلومة إضافية.
In the United States, the dealers and the factory, every owner, they know the keys.
يسمونه في أمريكا بتاع المصنع أو الوكيل لازم يعرف صاحب السيارة.
So if I have a possible owner, I can take the key code from the key I find from the lock. I can take, if I think maybe it's your car.
Okay.
And I've got a suspect key or a suspect lock.
Okay.
And I decode that lock and I say, okay, here's the code that fits this lock.
Okay.
I can run that code backwards and say, okay, I can match that code with what car you bought.
Okay.
Because I know the indirect code on your title.
Okay. بالكود أنا عارف نوع السيارة. يعني بالكلام نوع السيارة type the car هذا الكود.
So, but otherwise, I can't run backwards because there's too many cars with the same code.
لأن هناك كمية كبيرة من السيارات نفس الكود لأنه يصنع عشان القفل متكرر 5,000 مرة تكرر.
حسب نوع السيارة.
تكرر القفل، الكود تغير لأن السيارة بعد مثلا في ولاية نفس الكود بعد ولاية ثانية أو في دولة ثانية.
نفس السيارة.
5,000 يعني هذا فيقول بالرقم أنت تبغى نوع صاحب الشخص، كيف يعرفون الآن من الرقم صاحب الشخص فيه أوريدي 5,000 نفس الكود.
Basically, it's the relationship between the keys and the card.
Yeah.
Is one key for too many cards.
Yeah, it's not one key for one car.
Yeah. So, but you can trace the code A to a specific code but not at the specific code because it's going to give you many cards.
Unless you have an owner, so you have one more piece of information.
Yeah, and this list can go to
too many.
Yeah,
Too many,
too many.
that's
Is, the relationship is 1 to too many, and that is very difficult. That's what happens with also with in regular locks. We took an example of car keys because you can relate General Motors. It's a brand. They use one specific key. There's millions, and we took the differs and we calculate more or less how many keys they can have. And you say, well, just millions of cars, they're using the same key, and that is correct.
Yeah, the New York City Police Department, when we had the terrorist attempted bombing in Times Square,
okay,
one of my old friends is a sergeant with NYPD Special Operations Unit. He's also a locksmith.
Okay.
So he opens all their safes for them. So he called me and said, okay, we've got the keys from the terrorists that tried to blow up Times Square.
قضية محاولة انفجار تايمز سكوير في نيويورك، يقول اتصل بيني شخص من شرطة نيويورك وهو أيضا يعرف في الكواليس والأقفال، قال احنا عندنا مفاتيح للشخص اللي هو حاول يفجر تايمز سكوير.
The FBI, who obviously was working the case, did not have the capability to run the key codes backwards.
الشخص من الاف بي اي ما عنده القدره على انه يعرف ارقام الكودز مفاتيح اساس يسترجع المعلومات من اشخاص اخرين.
So my associate contacted me, and the factories did not have the capability of running the codes backwards. Ultimately, they got the guy.
اوكي، فهم ما عندهم معلومات ان يقدرون يسترجعون المعلومات بطريقه عكسيه، فبالتالي على العموم هم مسكوا الرجل. Okay.
So the other issue, this is a high security lock made by ASA out of Sweden. This is a very, very, very good lock.
هذا قفل من شركة آسا يعتبر من القوى الأقفال ممتازة جدا.
The ASA is in Dubai.
ولها يسمونها فرع دبي.
Okay, they're everywhere. All right? Here's what's important that you need to understand.
اللي يسمونها ابني بيته مرة ياخذ من آسا.
I'm gonna.
ناس علينا يوري.
What?
You want to build this house? Start buying from ASA now.
Yeah, start buying from ASA, right. Okay, so here's what is important in an investigation. The locksmiths only sell these locks. The licensed locksmiths buy ASA. By ASA, by Medico, by Abloy, by Schlegg Primus, which has an office here, Ingersoll Rand.
Okay. So,
okay?
But again?
Okay. This is a very special key.
Okay.
Because of this right here.
Okay.
This is called sidebar milling.
Oh, sidebar, both here and here up.
Yeah, this is a normal part of the key,
and this
is a sidebar code.
Sidebar code. Okay.
Now, here's what you need to understand for an investigation.
Okay.
Okay? Each locksmith is assigned a unique sidebar code.
Oh, okay.
So that another locksmith cannot duplicate this key.
هذا مفتاح آسا. شو مسوي نشأ المصنع؟ المصنع فيه مجرى طبيعي هذا اللي فوق، وفي مجرى ثاني هني. المجرى الثاني اللي هني هذا توقيع او رقم كود يعتبر لمحل معين لوكيل معين في منطقه معينه. يعني اذا انت اشتريت مثلا في لي وكيل كمثال بسيط، وكيل معين في الشارقه، وكيل معين في دبي. الوكيل معين في دبي هذا الكود ماله، ومن الشارقه لكود ثاني اخر جنبي هني مسوي لي. انا اذا بغيت نسخه ثانيه وانا عندي شارقه من دبي، لو اصير الشارقه ما اقدر اسوي لي، ما عندي القدره ان يعطيني يفتح نسخه ثانيه. الا ارجع ايش؟ عند المصدر دبي. الوكيل. الوكيل اللي هني.
Okay, now, So here's why this is important. Each locksmith is assigned a unique code. Blank keys.
كل وكيل أو محل اقفال معين له توقيع معين للمحل مال في هذا السايت.
So blank keys come from the factory. That part is blank.
Okay.
This part is cut.
Okay.
Okay?
النسخة الخام لكل من المصنع لهم يكون هذا طبعا مستوية، بس هذا يجي المصنع سوالي حق الشخص الوكيل في دبي. يعني لو انا عندي صرت مثلا السعوديه او شخص ما يسوي السعوديه ما يسوي لي اياه لان ما عندي التوقيع ماله هني.
So the locksmith buys his license for this sidebar code.
زين والوكيل يشتري توقيعه لهذا المفتاح. طبعا انتم اساس تشوفونه بشكل واضح، تشوفون كيف؟ هذا التوقيع هذا المجرى هذا المجرى مثل هني بس تحت سوالي يعني.
Okay, so no other locksmith can cut these keys. So their customer is a bank.
Okay. وما حد يقدر يفتح هذا عشان يشيل زباينهم.
So their customer is a bank and a car dealership. Okay? So what does that mean if I want to break into the bank or I want to go steal cars from the dealership? How do I get keys?
هني سؤال كيف احصل مفتاح لو انا بغيت افتح خزنة بنك او افتح سيارة؟ هذا السؤال كيف يبدأ هذا كود يزندو؟
Well, these keys are very, very difficult to replicate. Okay? So you're not going to get the blank keys.
Okay.
So here's the trick. And again, this is an investigative lead. If you've got a high security lock in a facility where there's this uniqueness for the locksmiths.
هذا هني يعني كيف تأثر فيه؟ لأن هذا بيساعد في قضية تحقيق لو في كواليس وأقفال تأمينات عالية. كيف حصل على النسخة هذه؟ هاي لازم يفيكم في التحقيق.
The one who's holding the key will be suspicious.
Yeah, but that's a real problem. Okay, that's a good answer. It's the wrong answer, but it's a good answer.
قال الشخص اللي عنده المفتاح هو بيكون مشتبه رئيسي. قال هاي إجابة خاطئة وإجابة صحيحة. Good answer. Okay.
Who else has got an answer?
من عنده إجابة؟
Manufacturer holder.
Huh?
The guy who's working in the manufacturer. Yes.
Well, that's always an issue. Okay, but let's assume that isn't where it came from. All right? So the question for you guys as an investigation is, okay, this is a really high security lock. Nobody can get the blanks.
اوكي انتوا اول تخمين ان هذا الماده الخامه تكون تخمين عاليه والخامه هذه السبب الحصول عليها.
And you reach the conclusion that there's no way that you can open this lock unless you have the key.
وتوصل الى مرحله انه لا يمكن فتح هذا الباب الا بوجود مفتاح.
Because the manufacturer tells you and swears on the Quran, you aren't opening this lock if you don't have the key.
المصنع يتحد تقسم انه ما يفتح الخزنه الا بهذا المفتاح الاصلي.
First of all, don't believe that.
اول شيء صدقوا كلامه.
Okay, because all of these locks we can bump open.
كلها صار تحت.
That's number one. Okay.
هذا رقم.
They didn't think so, but now they know. All right, it's not just us; it's all of them. All right, that's number one. Don't ever believe what the manufacturer tells you. If they say, "Look, our locks are patented. You can't do this," forget it. Don't believe it. That's number one. Okay, but you guys still haven't answered my question. How do I open the lock if the only way the manufacturer says you can open the lock is with the key?
كيف فتح الباب مفتاح القفل اذا المصنع يقول ما تفتحه الا بالمفتاح؟ مو بالمفتاح.
I will call Mr. Tobias. I will call you. Mr. Tobias, I will call you and come to...
You'll call me and we'll come. Okay. And first I'll give you my alibi why we weren't there. Right. Okay, so we didn't open the lock. Oh, okay, that's a good answer, but not the right one. Okay, so first of all, you need to be able to evaluate what makes the security of this lock. There's two security layers, as we call them. There's the regular bitting, the cuts, which is called bitting.
Okay.
Okay. That's normal to all pin tumbler locks.
Okay. في نوعين من التأمينات، التأمين اللي هو القطع هذا القفل المفتاح وهذا شيء طبيعي.
Alright, but the real security of this lock is the side code.
أما التأمين الأساسي لهذا القفل اللي هو الجانبي اللي حتى شفتوه جماعة اللي ما يشوفه الجانبي هذا هو التأمين الأصلي.
Why is this lock difficult to open? Because of the side code. This is a second set of pins.
ليش هو صعب فتحه؟ لأنه بسبب إن هذا القطع الجانبي.
Okay, and that key is very difficult to replicate or simulate. You're not going to do that in plastic.
Okay, هذا الصعب يسمونه التلاعب فيه أو محاولاته. حتى بالبلاستيك، حتى لو مع البلاستيك
Can we?
Clay.
Yes.
You can make it in silicone. Yes. But that means you have to have access to the key to do that. So, here's the trick. You need to sit back and say, all right, they have to have, what constitutes security in this lock is the sidebar code. This little side limit.
Okay.
Okay? So whoever opened this lock, unless they were very good at picking,
okay,
they had to have a key with the same sidebar code. How do we do that? The easiest way to do that is to order another set of locks from the same locksmith that you know to put them in to the bank or the car dealership. So you're at the car dealership casing to do this crime. They say, oh, who installed your locks?
Okay.
And sometimes the locksmiths have a little sign installed by Ace Locksmith.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm going to go to that locksmith and I'm going to say, I understand you carry ASA locks.
Okay.
Some special high security locks. Oh yes, they're the best. I want some for my business.
Okay.
So now you buy locks from that guy.
Okay.
You got keys with the same sidebar code.
Okay.
So now you've just defeated the whole security of the system. Because if you can get or make a bump key with the same sidebar code, you can open the lock.
بيكون بسيطة جدا. أنا أصير نفس الوكيل مثلا على فرض هذا الوكيل موجود في دبي. أوريدي أنا أصير عند المحل أقول له أبى فول حقي أنا ما يسمونه لأنه السايد بار القطع الجانبي هو نفس الموجود اللي عندك أنت موجود في المؤسسة الثانية مثل ما تسرقها. خدت انتهى يسمونه المفتاح على اساس ركبت حق كم باب عندك في البيت او في الشركه او ما شابه. خدت انتهى المفتاح خلاص عندك المعلومه الداتا بيس ما عليك الا غير تشكل القفل الثاني اللي فوق مثل البومبينج خلاص تشتغل عليه عادي.
يعني هذه يونيفايد
ايه هذه اهم شيء هذه القطعه هاي.
موحد يعني
لا موحد هنا على منطقه دبي. البحرين موحد شيء ثاني. ما سووا لنا شيء. ها؟ ما سووا لنا شيء. اهم شيء السكيورتي عندك هذا هو حاط رهين ثغرات. هي حاطه هاي النقطه ما يقدر صعب يفتحون الباب بس انت المجرم ما يفكر بتفكير السكيورتي حط بالك اللي بيناوي على شيء بيخطط شيء ما يفكر بنفس تفكير اللي يحط تأمينات.
So I'm an employee and I take that, I borrow that key like we were talking about yesterday, and I put it on the copy machine, and I make a picture 1-to-1 of that key, because the copy machine, if you set it, will do an exact 1-to-1 replication. Okay? Now I take that picture of that machine to somebody else who's my co-conspirator on the outside. And if I have the sidebar code, I can cut the key. I can cut it with 5.
We actually did
We did this.
it in real life. Okay? We got a reporter and he was talking to us about how you can copy keys. We said, well,
high security keys.
The side
Oh, we already got the sidebar code from the locksmith.
for the specific region.
Yeah, so it's a standard key.
What's the advantage?
okay.
What do you mean?
It's a war between.
You know, nothing is done.
What do you mean?
I mean, for the security.
Let's
security.
It's not like that. The thing is, these are holes in the system.
These are holes in the system that you need to be aware of.
Let's go back.
Because remember, you told me.
Mark, we have to go to break now.
Okay.
We come back.
How many times have Just help everybody. Wait till we come in tomorrow. If we can get a bunch of metal locks. We need to tell it. We'll try to do that this afternoon. Somebody in the break. Who was I talking to? Somebody I asked to ask me a question. Okay. Yeah. Remind me of the question that we talked about in the break. Oh, okay. Here's a suggestion. I got a call a couple of years ago from the Athens, Greece anti-terrorism unit in their crime laboratory.
هو تلقى اتصال من اليونان من مختبر متخصص في متابعة الأرقام.
And one of our PowerPoints, if we get to it, is the information from keys.
أحد المعلومات اللي إذا وصلنا في الباوربوينت عن المفاتيح.
Criminals carry keys.
المجرمين يحملون مفاتيح.
Okay, so my thought was, but AFTI didn't have the money to do it.
هذا الفكرة موجودة بس المنظمة ما عندها القدرة المادية عشان يسوونها.
If there was a database, because your question was, why isn't there a worldwide database?
السؤال الأخ خالد ليش ما يكون هناك قاعدة بيانات على المفاتيح بشكل عالمي؟
What there needs.
هو يتكلم عن شيء عالمي، هو الفكرة موجودة من زمان يقول لك.
لا بس احنا نظبط الفكرة
يعني he was only for the
For the UAE. Okay, that's easy.
هذا بسيط.
That's easy because you guys have a limited universe.
لأن عندكم أنتم كمية محدودة.
And let me tell you, some of the companies that we work for would cooperate in that.
وبعض الشركات نحن سلمناهم يتعاونون معنا.
All right, just like a firearms database, we can provide you a locks database.
مثل قاعدة بيانات الأسلحة النارية موجودة. قاعدة بيانات أيضا في الأطفال والقوانين أيضا بإمكان إيجاد قاعدة بيانات.
Now the problem is all the Chinese and Korean and Taiwanese locks, we don't know about.
المشكلة حتكون المصانع الصغيرة مثل موجودة في الصين وكوريا وتايوان من هالدول أيضا ما عندنا معلومات عنها.
We can develop information on real locks, but not on junk locks.
ممكن احنا نوفر معلومات عن الأطفال والقوانين الحقيقية بس مو ضعيفة أو زبالة.
Okay, so what we recommended was, let me tell you the problem. We got a terror cell in Hamburg, Germany, a safe house, a terror safe house in Hamburg, Germany.
هم حاصلين خزنة إرهابي في هامبورغ في ألمانيا.
And a citizen from Germany is arrested in Phoenix, Arizona.
ومواطن ألماني يلقى قام في مدينة فينيكس في ولاية أريزونا.
How do you tie the guy in Phoenix to the safe house in Hamburg?
كيف تربط هذا الشخص اللي ألقي القبض عليه في فينيكس في أريزونا مع الخزنة الموجودة في ألمانيا في هامبورغ
with keys.
مع المفتاح.
So, let's just say that the safe house in Hamburg had been raided. With a search warrant. Raided.
The police go and
search.
أوكي. يعني افترض أن صار الشرطة نفسه بحث للخزنة.
Okay. If I were running the crime lab in Hamburg, I want to take the locks off the door.
إذا أنا شغال في المختبر في هامبورغ لازم أخذ قفل الباب.
And I want to photograph those locks. I want to know the keyway. I want to know the combination that opens that lock.
أبغى أعرف بصور مجرى المفتاح شكل مجرى المفتاح والشفرة أرقامها what else code.
The code. I want to know the combination, the key combination that opens the lock.
وبعرف اللي هو الحواف الكومبينيشن ذلك الشفرات ارتفاعها نزولها صعودها لهذا يعني 4 5 6 يعني شرحت مياه.
I can measure the pins in that lock. Once I know the manufacturer, I can tell you the code that will open that lock.
متى عرفت مصنع القفل هذا أنا بإمكاني أقول لك شو الكود للقفل هذا.
Okay, are you all with me on that? Y'all understand?
فهمتوا كلامه ولا ما في استيعاب؟
Okay.
نص.
So I can figure out. I can figure out the code from the key or from the lock. You guys are making fun of me.
We're gonna review that tape. Okay. Time stamp on that one.
Okay, so you understand.
We're gonna do our own investigation.
Yeah, you understand that we can reverse engineer the lock to come up with the key.
تعرفون إنه ممكن نسوي استرجاع معلومات نعرف شكل المفتاح من الشفرة.
Okay, so I can figure out the key code from either the key or the lock.
أنا ممكن أعرف الشفرة الكود من المفتاح أو من القفل.
So if I catch a suspect, not a suspect, let's say it's something totally different, and he's got a key with a code that I decode in Phoenix, I can tell you that that guy may be connected with that location in Hamburg.
يعني أنا لو حصلت مثلا شخص في فينيكس في أريزونا معاه مفتاح بكود أنا ممكن أربطه بهالمفتاح بذاك الخزنة الموجودة في هامبورغ بمعرفة الكود مال هناك.
So nobody's really doing this. That was my recommendation to AFTI, to build a worldwide terrorist and criminal database.
هذا يقول لك هذا الشيء الوحيد اللي ما سواه قاعدة بيانات عن اللي هو الكود والشفرة للمفاتيح من منظمة آفتي على أساس إنه هو طالب يسوون هاي قاعدة البيانات ويشرف عليها بس القضية المالية ما ساعدت على عمل قاعدة البيانات بيكون هذا مجاله وايد ممتاز إذا عمل. شو سؤالك؟
That's of course in suspected cases, like because if you do suspect everyone who has this exact same combination of the key everywhere in the world, then you would have a huge number of suspects.
No, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is to match one person with one location.
القضية هي مش قضية إني أنا أربط شخص ما بمكان ما بالمفتاح اللي عنده. قاعدة البيانات هذه.
I'm not trying to figure out everybody that might have a key to that location. I'm trying to tie you in Phoenix, Arizona, who I don't know what your deal is. All I know is you're a German, you're Turkish, or whatever, and you got arrested in America for a traffic violation. We don't know who you are. And the German government now comes back and says, this guy might be a terrorist or a career criminal. So now I got a bunch of keys that you got. What's the fastest way to figure out if you're tied to a suspect location in Germany?
Yeah.
With the keys. And I don't want to send those keys back over to Germany and let you go away or not know anything. I want to know right now. So if the crime lab in Germany with the BKA had taken the locks from the house when they raided it 6 months before, now I got a key that I can say, you know, what's the likelihood in the world that this guy has a key that fits this lock? That's pretty remote. It's not going to happen every day at all. Because look at statistically the number of keys that may be out there for that lock. That's the value. And so all we proposed was, if there's a database that you could start developing that kind of information, you could associate suspects with locations. And the same thing, what happens if you find the guy, a suspect, who's got a locker, he's got a key with him, and you arrest him for some petty offense, okay? And he's got keys. What do those keys tell you? You look at it and say, I don't know, they're keys. Oh, wrong. Some of those keys may give you some really neat information. That, let's say, may tie you back to a locker where he's got stolen property stream.
يقول لك مومن صار يقول لك إيجاد مفاتيح عند شخص في أي قضية مرورية قضية كذا أو مشتبه ممكن هذا المفاتيح تربطها بقضية معينة في مكان معين في جهة معينة. مفاتيح مهمة إيجاد عند شخص، مثل لو مسكت واحد في أمريكا في أريزونا في فينيكس وبالمفتاح ربطته في خزنة في قضية ما في هامبورغ في ألمانيا. نفس الشيء حتى اللي ما شاء الله عندي جماعة تحريات الحين طرشوا لي مفاتيح حصلوا على شرطة طرشوا لي إياها قالوا شو المفاتيح شو هذه؟ نفتح القضية الثانية لأن صار أكثر مرة طرشوا لي مفاتيح. وهم أيضا مش قضية، هو سؤال ذكي صراحة، مش سؤال لا، هم يبغون يربطون مع قضايا معينة مجهولة.
ما يبغون يربطون
المفتاح مع قضية مثلا صارت جريمة قتل على فرض حسب الكود، نفترض صار جريمة قتل في مكان معاه وفي خزنة وفي وباب مفتوح، اوكي انظر على مجموعة مشتبهين سواء كانوا مشتبهين يكون عن فاتح، هل الفاتح هي نفسها اللي استخدمت في فتح الباب هذا ولا لا؟
فهذا هو يعني الربط بين المفتاح والخزنة او المفتاح
والباب مع هذا الشخص هذا في قضية ربط. يعطيك مؤشرات ان هذا كان هناك او هذا شو وصل المفتاح عند هذا الرجل.
The keys talk.
The keys talk.
Excuse me, I have a سؤال. الربط بناء على الكود او بناء على الترس اللي يترك
هو الان كان طريقه معينه، مثلا يقول لك في المانيا البي كي اللي هي مع بي كي اللي هو بعرض مثل الاف بي اي في ما يسمى بي كي. البي كي اللي هو يسمونه يصوروه مثلا قفل الباب، مجرى قفل الباب، تبادل معلومات، والمجرى والشفرات اللي يعرفون الكود يرسلوا لي اياه، هو اوريدي عند الكود مفتاح فيعرف عن طريق المجرى وعن طريق شفرة القفل يعرف شو هالكود موافقة مع هذا يعني هذا مفتاح لهذا القفل.
بناء على الكود اللي موجود على الكفر المفتاح ولا بناء على الشيء بالشكل يعني؟
هو بالشيء بيعرف الكود. بيعرف الشيء اللي داخل البنسات، شكل اللي بيعرف الكود.
لا أتكلم عن المفتاح. هو حصل مع المفتاح.
المفتاح في كود رقم موجود. على حسب الأسماء وحسب الكلام مكتوب بالكود.
دكتور إذا لقينا شخص مثلا مقتول وما نعرف هويته، يقدر يعرف من المفتاح من أي منطقة؟
He said somebody find a homicide in some place and they find the key in his pocket.
Absolutely.
Can they know which area he is? Difficult.
Sometimes yes.
Yeah,
that's why you look at keys. If you find my keys, the first thing that you're going to notice on my keys, well, basically, they're not common keys. You see, well, that's
the better the lock,
keys.
the better the chance.
يعني حسب شوف اذا كان هذا لا ده بدر لك يعني الاقفال الجيده اللي فيها معروفه معلومات الداتابيز مالها واللي فيها المعطيات الفرصه افضل لعثور مكان الشخص هذا. اما اذا اللي هو تشيب لوكس صعب تحصلها.
The better the lock. Let me give you a really good example. 2 years ago, we released a video in one of our speeches that was broadcast worldwide about an electromechanical lock that we broke from Germany.
عرضوا طبعا فيديو قفل الكتروميكانيكال من سنتين كيف فتحوه.
Okay, so in the video you could see the key, and if you still framed it, so you made a still image. We got that lock from a competitor in Austria. Okay? It was a German lock, very high-tech German lock. We got our client in Austria to go through a locksmith in Germany that they knew, because we couldn't get it from the companies. They wouldn't give it to us.
Okay.
So they go secretly to one of the locksmiths that carried their locks and says, we need one of these locks from Germany.
Okay.
So the guy got it for us, so we could figure out how to break it. So we release a video. The company in Germany takes the video and they do still frame. Oh, remind me about the trailers. Okay? They do the video, they decode the depth increments on the key.
Okay.
They look it up in their database and they figure out what lock it was. They go back to the locksmith and say, who'd you sell that lock to?
Okay.
We sold it to this lock company in Austria. The company in Germany calls the president of the lock company in Austria and says, what in the hell are you doing buying our locks? And the guy says, for money. What kind of stupid question is that? You sell the locks?
Okay. هو قصد القضية كلام كل هذا على موضوع انه كيف يقتضي اثر القفل. يقول احنا مسوي لنا فيلم. احنا اخذنا القفل طبعا المصنع رفض يعطينا القفل ممكن على اساس ايش؟ نفتحه. فاحنا خلينا احد منافسيه في النمسا يروح حد منهم يروح عند المحل قال ابى اشتري هذا النوع من القفل. فمحل الاتصال طبعا طلب لهم اياه اعطاهم اياه فسلموا اياه على اساس ايش؟ يفتحوا لما المصنع الرئيسي صاحب المصنع شافوا الفيديو من خلال شفرة المفتاح المستخدم اللي مال القفل حللوا المفتاح عرفوا الشفرة ظهر الكود من الكود معلومات عندهم عرفوا ان هذا المفتاح بيع لهذا المحل في النمسا راحوا له في النمسا قالوا له انت على منو بعته؟ قال على المصنع الفلاني. صار مدير المصنع اتصل قال له ليش اخذت وسويت عرض عليه فتح؟ يعني لاي سبب؟ قال من اجل الفلوس.
Yeah. This is the same thing if you find a key on a dead guy. Because the first thing you want to know is this a unique key? So let's say those ASA keys that we showed you with the side bit milling. You give me one of those keys, I'm going to tell you who bought it.
Yeah, because you can go back to the.
I'm going to tell you exactly who bought that lock.
على مثال اسال لو قلت لي اي اسال انا ممكن اقول لكم هذا القفل على مين انباع.
Even where is that key popular? You know.
That's right. We're going to tell you who's the locksmith or locksmiths that might have sold it. The factory is going to have the codes. Now, those are $100 cylinders.
اوكي هذا الكالون قفل هذا يكلف حوالي $100 ولكن يقول الشيء الجيد قصد الكلام كله هذا الجيد انه من خلال القفل مفتاح للمصانع الكبيره او المصانع الجيده انه ممكن تختفي اثر الشخص اللي شرى المفتاح.
You have to understand a little bit more about high security locks and how
these aren't cheap locks
and how they protect the consumer against unauthorized duplication.
كيف تحمي المستهلك من يسمونه هذا لان هل اهميه الكون الاطفال مؤمنه تامين جيد بسعرها عاليه ممكن حصل معلومات وراها.
Very fast. If I have a regular key, I go to a locksmith, give me 20 keys, they cut 20 keys, they don't have question, I have 20 keys for whatever it is. Okay?
ممكن تصير عندنا محل اطفال تقول اعطني 20 قفل حقي بتاخذ ما في اي معلومات عنك انت.
I can go to any locksmith, my favorite, my friend, whoever can make me that key, I'll make that key. High security locks. You buy the system, you see the card? It's a registration card.
يجي معاه بطاقة تسجيل رقم يكون مدون فيه اسم الزبون واسم المحل اللي سرق او اسم المحل اللي شرى منه واسم يسمونه الزبون اللي شراه وعنوانه ان هذا كله بالاخر انت محتاج هالمعلومات.
So when I go and buy that lock from Marc is going to sell me that lock and he's going to tell me, okay, this lock is restricted for this specific user. So you either need the card or I need to be registered with Marc in order for me to get additional copies of that key.
Because the locksmith doesn't have this blank unless he's registered to make this particular key. And the highest level of security, you not only have to have the card and the signature, and the locksmith doesn't even get the code. The locksmith swipes the card through his machine. The factory sends the code directly to the machine to cut the key.
So the process is totally different. I went to you to make 20 copies. Now I come with the medical key and say, no, I can make that key.
And they all do the same thing. It's not just medical.
Why I cannot is, first of all, is when I don't have the key. Oh, you don't have the key. Who has that key? Is it, do you have a card? Yes. Who do you brought the lock from? Marc. So go to Marc and make a copy. So I go to Marc and say, hey, I want a copy. I say, I won't make a copy for you if you don't have the registration card.
هذا الكلام كله بشكل إيجاز واختصار. هذا الكلام كله على قضية تنظيم عملية النسخ وعملية إيش؟ يسمونه قاعدة بيانات اللي تفضل فيها الأخ خالد المعمري في بداية كلامه على موضوع انك لابد تكون هناك قاعده بيانات بهالمعلومات. هم الان يوضحون مدى اهميه قاعده البيانات في هذا المجال. هذا المجال الان في قضايا تحقيق بتفيد كثير ان القفل او المفتاح اللي عندك معلومات عنه وصاحب وكذا للاطفال ذات كفاءه عاليه في الجوده في التامينات ممكن تحصل معلوماته اذا ضبط عند اي شخص. ممكن توصل الى الموقع اللي كان في المفتاح. هذا اهميه ان ايش؟ أقوال ذات تأمينات عالية من أقوال رخيصة.
So the real question is, what's unique about the key?
Yeah. Another issue is some manufacturers just do it by the card. I bought the lock from Marc. This is my keys, only 2 keys, and I can tell you I only make 2 keys. Nasser gets my card. Because that's what he's going to ask me. I don't need your keys. All you need is the card, the proof that the lock is yours. Hey, no problem. Somebody grabs the card and goes, hey, I want 20 keys. What he's going to say, yes, you have the card, we're going to cut it, you have 20 keys. It's a high security lock. Somebody made 20 keys for you without you knowing. So high security locks is also it's a card system. Where's your card? Because with the card is what he needs. That's what the manufacturer requires for him to cut a key. Show me the card.
So in the investigation, you got the dead guy with the key. If it's a $10 lock.
مثلا هذا من الاطفال الممتازه اللي شرح فيه يقول الان هذا القفل الان فاتح يجي معه بطاقه. البطاقه موجوده فيها رقم سيريال. اوكي؟ هذا الرقم اوريدي اذا صار انا عندي بسوي كوبي هالمفتاح ما بيصير المفتاح اذا معك البطاقه هاي. ياسر مع البطاقه ممكن ياسر يروح يقول ابغى نسخه للمفتاح يسوي نسخه.
But now go back. If you find a key or you have a case, yes sir.
If you want to check this,
You want
to change the look. And you have a card.
You want to change the lock and you don't have the card.
No, you can't do the lock. It's easy.
Yeah. The lock is the restriction depending on the manufacturer. If you have the card, you make the keys. No problem. You can transfer the card. Anybody who has the card, make keys. This some system is by signature. Is Marc Weber Tobias or Tobias Bluzmanis by signature is the only person who can make that key. It's depending on the
Okay, so I'm going to send these keys around. I want you guys, this is pretty obvious. One here. One here. Here. I want you guys to look at these keys. This is one of our clients in Austria. Okay. You found this key on a dead guy. Tell me how I figure out who owns the lock.
حصلت هذا المفتاح عند واحد ميت. كيف؟
How do you know who owns the lock? How do you know who's the dead guy?
شو بتعرف يسمونه شو بتعرف شخصية المتوفي.
موجود.
This one issued with a car?
No, you found the key on the dead guy. It's on his key ring.
But that key has a
code number.
Okay, what's on the key?
Code number.
Manufacturer name.
Manufacturer name, that's right. And you understand that the shape, the shape of the key head also tells you the manufacturer. Yeah, look at the shape. They're all patented or copyrighted. Okay, it's just like advertising. Every manufacturer has a unique shape. Okay. Yeah, Evo sells everywhere. They're very good locks. Okay, so what is there in this key that'll take me back to identify the guy? Okay, let's look at the key. You're the smart one. This is just like law school. We used to pick out one guy for the class. Okay, so tell me, what is there in that key? You guys got a case now. What is there in that key that's going to take me back to identify the guy? No, it's okay. They got it.
Well, first of all, have you seen a key like that before?
Yeah, let's say you haven't seen a key like that.
No.
So you've never seen that before.
So you think it's a normal lock from here in Dubai?
It's unique. No. It's unique.
So that's the. Let's keep going.
Keep going.
So where that key should be popular?
Okay, that's exactly right. Good answer. Google it. Google it. So you go on. So tell me everything that's on that key. You speak English, so tell everybody in the class everything you see about that key.
شو تحصل يعني شو معلومات المفتاح شو يعطيك من المعلومات؟
Code number.
Okay, what's the code number?
05B0310.
Okay, what else is on that key?
The shape.
Yeah, what else?
The component. company name, the brand?
Which is what?
APS?
No.
Ava?
Eva. Eva is the manufacturer. Okay, we call that, the key is coin with the that's their name and logo. Okay? What else is on the key?
Two security features there.
Okay, what are they?
Side security.
Yeah, the little dimples.
Yeah.
Yep, it's not a sidebar. It's actually a keyway. Yeah, on that kind of lock, it's a keyway. All right. So, first of all, we know, has everybody had a chance to look at this? We know that this is made by Eva, because that's their little brand logo, EVVA, Eva. Okay? The second thing we probably know is this EPS is probably the model of the lock. Because EPS isn't a company name. So you go to Google, because it's the easiest and fastest, if you key in Eva lock, you're going to find them on the internet. And then you're going to find that one of their new types of keys is an EPS. Huh? Okay, then you're going to call the factory and you're going to say, I'm with the Dubai Crime Lab. Do you guys have a lock that's called EPS? Yes. Okay, there's a number on the key. Tell me who you made that for. Okay, let's say that that number isn't on the key, because sometimes they're instructed not to put numbers on keys for security. Then you're going to say, okay, we're going to fax you a copy, or we're going to send you the scanned picture, and you guys decode that lock, okay? So let's just say that's a 27328, okay? I just extrapolate that out. Let's say there's 8 depths. Start from the tip. Okay? Okay, so the factory is going to look up that code.
هذا الكود هذا الكود 1 2 3 4 5 6 لا 5
Okay, so
5 pins. So for each pin has a number. يعني كل pin
they can decode this. If you send a picture of this to the factory, they'll tell you instantly what the code is. Okay, now I don't know how many depths are on these keys, but I'm guessing probably, what do you think, 8?
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with that.
Because this one is higher. Okay, so like I said, it's 27328. Yeah, this is a guess. Okay, so how do I extrapolate out the code? So Toby and I agree. Let's just say that this key is divided into 8 depths, from top to bottom, 1 to 8. You with me? So if you look at that key, you can look at it and say, okay, that first cut, that might be, it's not no cut, which would be a 1. It's a little bit deeper than a 1. So it's a 2. And then you look, okay, then there's a deep cut, but not all the way down. So the second cut, let's call it 7. If we say this one's an 8, the deepest cut, this would be a 7. It's a little higher than that one.
Sir, I think by that experience we can recognize this keys belong to which
The thing is, the manufacturer, what is valuable is that the manufacturer can tell you, hey, we don't sell that type of lock in Dubai.
Yeah. So, and then they can tell you
that lock is only sold in the United States.
Or in Austria.
Or in Austria. They said that is a registered system, and it was sold in this area. So you're looking at probably a person who has some ties with the person with coffee.
Or a dealer. The bottom line is, you can take that key and derive a lot of information, because this is not a cheap lock.
High security.
يعني باختصار يقول لكم هذا المفتاح ممكن طلع من معلومات لانه مش من الاطفال رخيصه، وهذه يعني وهذه ميزه الاطفال يعني كمية عاليه ممكن تطلع من معلومات تفيدك في مجال التحقيق.
High security locks also. Remember that I have one with a car that I bought from Marc? I got robbed, and I called you guys and said, somebody enters my house. I have no TVs. They stole my TVs. And I have a high security lock that is impossible to pick. And I only have 2 keys. One is in the safe, and I have the other card. Okay? If you go back to Marc, they say, hey, you sold this lock to a person. How many copies of the key he has made? Oh, he bought the lock on January or whatever, and he made 20 keys. 20 keys? Okay.
We're all cheap.
So you're gonna go back to me and say, where are the 20? Show me the 22 keys. I said, what 22 keys? I only got 2 keys. Yeah, but we check with your locksmith for that code, for that person, they got 20 keys more.
Don't forget.
Oh, why the issue for him? Because remember that I left my car here?
Yeah.
Somebody took, Nasser took the Nasser had 20 keys.
This car should be have, the identity for each person, and then compare it. Whether this identity.
So what I'm trying to tell you is, sometimes a high security lock can help you in a case. When the people say, I only have
there is a chance for it.
Yeah. The better the lock, and don't forget, the locksmiths have all the keys.
Yes.
So you always want to consider who has access to the key or the code.
How you get to Nasser to the locksmith. The locksmith is going to say, hey, somebody came and signed that. And Nasser, do you have video? Well, yes. Oh, I recognize that guy.
This strip, there's a magnet strip.
So
should contain
just check
information of the user.
Check with
your factory actually has that. The mag stripe just identifies the lock.
Check with your locksmith, with your lock supplies. Hey, who sells these locks? How they're controlled? Do you keep records? Do you have a camera? How long do you keep this record? Can anybody make copies of
And
it?
what's the security of the records?
Still use.
Big problem. What's the security of the records?
هذا النظام طبعا المشكله عندنا في الامارات ودول الخليج هذا النظام اللي يتطرقون له للاسف مو موجود. هو موجود عندهم هناك حفظ السجلات مالهم خاصه يستعملون كواليس يعني تيمات عاليه فعارفين الريكورد مال السجلات مالهم نشلنا وكم نسخه سووا وكل كذا هذه سجلات تنفع في التحقيق. مشكلتنا احنا سجلاتنا ما في موجود سجلات في هذا المجال. يبغى قضيه اعاده اليه وضع القوانين او اقتراحات هذه المفروض تطلع. بما ان 9:30 مسموحون لها طولنا عليكم اليوم بس نبغى 8:30 نبدا مبكر الله يخليكم باكر.